Hey guys, how are you? Hope everyone's doing good. Today is Wednesday, March 4th, 1 o'clock p.m. Right on time. That's super nice, right? All right. So how is your week going? Anything interesting happened? How's everybody's weather? All sorts of fascinating things going on, right? It's been a pretty good week. Pardon me. I got a little cold. I think I'm getting over it. I think this is the first day I'm kind of coming out of it. I see Shiloh's in the house. Hi, Shiloh. Kevin Johnson from Tennessee. Hi, Kevin. Dimple, good to see you, Dimple. George Graham, always good when you visit from Punta Gorda, Florida. Tiana Houston, good to see you, lady. Mike Page, always great to see you as well. All right, so we got a little few of you guys here, nice and bright and early. Looks like the first question, it's from Shiloh, so let's hop into it, guys. Yeah, let's see what's going on. And by the way, there's Tasha. Oh, did you guys notice? Can you see that little barcode up there? Not really sure what it. They just said, "Oh, you can put in this." I'm sorry, QR code, right? I said that wrong. It's to the free evaluation, so I thought, oh, okay, I'll try it. Let's see what goes on. You know me and my tech skills—they're not exactly top of the line. There you go, baby. Okay, give her just a little tiny bit. A little treat. She likes Wednesdays as much as I do. She hasn't been in here in a couple days. It was really terrible, but I was doing a lot of work out there. Just, I was pulling some midnight oil, literally midnight oil. And yesterday was the last one, and I actually didn't have to work till midnight. It was more like 8, so that was good. It's just while a lot of different projects are going on, you know? So anyway, let's get to Shiloh. Good to see you again, Shiloh. Oops, did I get you up there? Shiloh says, thank you in advance for your time. Always my pleasure, Shiloh. I have questions about the work history section. Okay, it was such an important one, guys. Like, and at hearing time is when I see it the most. And I'm utterly grateful about our very anal retentive way of making sure function reports for our clients are, you know, really accurate, pinpoint accurate in the ways that are important. Hey, what? She's saying she wants another one. So anyway, so this is pretty timely there, Shiloh. If you haven't worked since 2023 and worked in customer service from home with ability to take long breaks, due to PTSD with panic attacks, towards the end, it was around 4 hours out of an 8-hour week. I was listening to some of your videos and you talked about sitting, standing, etc. And it was important to show, funny you mentioned this, we'll talk about this, show the full 8 hours. I haven't got to that section yet doing the application online, but just wanted to make sure that I fill it out correctly. I think it's a great idea. If you had one job in the past 5 years, the 5 years that are going to be your relevant period, I think it's a great idea to do the on paper, pre, in advance. If you only have that one job, to do it indeed on the paper first, because if you only put in one job when you apply, it is going to make you do all those details. And then you're on the spot in the middle of applying. And that's not really a great place to be. It's not that you can't go out and come back in, but they're going to start nagging you with letters if you don't get this thing out within like 2 days after you started it. It's a real pain in the ass. Oops, I mean ours. Sorry about that. She said that, not me. So, all right. So it sounds like you're working 4 hours, not a day, a week. So were you doing like an hour here and there or 1 4-hour shift? I don't know that that's clear, Shiloh. But let me tell you, I have a case where I was just reviewing work history, and it's a person who was part-time and down to 4 hours a day. Well, and the argument here was that it wasn't SGA when you looked at the certified earnings per year and clearly per month. So the argument is that it's not SGA anyway, although it's in the 5-year period. So for this person, we're already preparing SSA 820 because we're asserting that that person hasn't worked since 2017, not SGA work, because that is the argument, and that all the work thereafter, oh my goodness, is non-SGA, and therefore it is not past relevant work either. So that would put the person with no transferable skills off the bat. And of a grid person, that's one of the 3 prongs you need to meet. So if I can knock out that there's no past relevant work, despite the fact they're working part-time, they weren't making SGA, then we have 1 prong out of the way that has to be proven for a grid win. But it is difficult. So what I did in this case, Shiloh, and you sound like you might be under SGA too, but you have to figure out when you were above SGA. If you were above SGA at some point in the 5-year period, and if your DLI is ahead of you, the 5-year period is going to be from the date of your whatever adjudication is going to be taking place. It's going to be a moving target. But so do it as of today and look 5 back, and it's going to be keep sliding along in the future, which is good for you. But whenever you stopped working SGA, so when those hours and the pay drop down below the SGA amount, that's good. I'm trying to think how we did it, because I've seen it done different ways. It was the one job in the application, described the job ending in 2017, and then describing the hours when it was SGA. That's what we did. So we did the 8-hour thing, so they could actually, but we're knocking it out where that's not going to be relevant anyway, because that stopped in 2017. So we have to do all that little legwork, because they're going to just probably demand it anyway. But when you look at in the application, if you had only 1 job, it's going to say how many jobs did you have in the past 5 years? Okay, I had 1. Okay, answer all these slow questions, which is exactly what you're seeing on the paper form. And we put, it says start date and end date. In this case, we decided to say start date was like 2000, end date 2017, and that's when the person worked full-time. And then we were able to then rationally do, okay, so it's 7 hours of standing, or 7.5 hours of standing, 30 hours of sitting. It's a manual job, and get into all the hard stuff. Because I do want them to see that anyway. Even though, again, there's going to be no past relevant work, that job's not going to count, because it's out of the time range. So that's how we did it. Now, other times, and there's kind of a few ways to skin the cat. We are going to have to do the 820. We already have it all done. It's ready to go. They're going to demand it. I might actually send it before they demand it, because it's to the field office. It's to help it get over the hump to get to a medical workup office. So we might not wait for that. I do have to wait until I'm on board, though. So that's, sometimes something like that can't happen because they're so slow. But if you put my past work and put 4 hours a week, and then probably it was all in 1 day, right? Or maybe 2 days, 2-hour shifts, then you would be putting that information. And then it is going to be, you are going to be saying, well, I only stood for an hour and I sat for an hour, maybe because you were changing position or whatever. I don't know that you can't do it that way either. But if it's not past relevant work, it's going to end up being not past relevant work, which is always a good thing. It's always good for a case in a way, because you have no skills to transfer. Because the only transferable skills can come from the relevant 5 years. All right. I don't know if that give you any little insight and ideas on how to do that, because it really depends on your situation. You're making crumbs all over. Fine. Sorry. She's excited to be here, though, I tell you, because she was pretty bored out there. I felt bad, but I mean, I was in the room with her, but she wasn't like this. She likes to be up close and personal. Kevin Johnson in the house. Hello from Tennessee. Still watch you and Ginsburg every Wednesday live or replay. That's awesome. I pop into Jonathan's occasionally and take a little look-see. His is, as you guys know, at 8:30 at night, usually, or 8:45 now he's doing. I'm usually if I'm still up and not working, I'm usually off doing something else. So, but I haven't seen him. Well, I've seen him in this other network group we're in, just discussing like legal practices and things like that. But we haven't coordinated lately. All right, she dropped the rest of her little cookie, so that's good. Maybe I bet you she's got the sugar, and now she's going to go take a nap. Notice how she hightailed it over there. Go ahead, you can go. So, hi there, Dimple from Ohio. And George Graham, as I said, Deanna. Dimple, question is, how long does it usually take for a claim to go from the field office to the DDS? I'm going on 2 months now. Yeah, sometimes we have to bug them, right? So we send our resend letters, and then you make a phone call. It can take a while, and it really depends on the office. So I do think a gentle nudge isn't harmful after, certainly within a month or two, you know. I would definitely start, you know, calling every week now, maybe. And the attorney can also send a letter every week. The thing with the letters, they all go into a big, this is my understanding, they all go into like a big receptacle, and then someone has to sort them and do all this stuff. So hopefully that will get a move on. But I think phone calls can be good. Very annoying if they're going to not pick up their phone in a timely fashion, but it's worth doing, you know. Put your speakerphone on, put your plug in, go about your day, maybe watch some YouTube on your on your device while you wait for the pickup call. And then, you know, always honey, not vinegar. Just say, hey, you know, I know I've sent you the application back on so-and-so date. Everything was included. My attorney sent in the appointment of representation papers that I signed 2 months ago, and then again, and like 3 more times. Can you please process them, because this case has been sitting for a while? And I always say be super nice and super kind, because number one, no one deserves to get berated. And I know, Dimple, you wouldn't be doing anything rude anyway, but I'm saying it for everybody else. But number two, you got people with the power to toss things over the side potentially. You know, like, don't bite the hand that's controlling your case, right? Like, you kind of have to do a little arse kissing. See, I said it right that time. I don't want YouTube to yell at me. There's enough shadow banning as it is. All right. Mike says, Stephanie, praying for our troops. Indeed. Absolutely, we are. Always. Whenever there's military action, right? Dimple says she could hear. That was great. Justin Zane is in the house. Hey, Justin. From the Caribbean. Caribbean, guys, or Caribbean? How do y'all say it? 1, Caribbean. 2, Caribbean. Which way? Caribbean. I think I say number 1. But I've heard people say it the other way. So maybe Justin can tell us what people in the Caribbean say. Maybe we should all follow suit. All right. Deanna, thank you. Adam's in the house. Nice to see you, Adam, always. Dimple just checked the Dimple, we're showing our ages when we say barcode. It's a QR code. Right? Well, you know, we always got to get up with the lingo of the time. So QR code, that's pretty cool. It's kind of, that was brand new when I just got in here today, right 2 seconds before, maybe 60 seconds before I turned it on. You know, it was on and set up and ready to go, but I hadn't sat down yet and turned it, connected it, started it. I saw that. I'm like, and those little media assets they have. That's pretty cool. Jeffrey Taylor's in the house. Howdy from South Texas. Hey, South Texas. You've had some interesting races. Political races. Justin says, as some know, I'm a disabled vet and received most of my treatment there. I think he's saying in the Caribbean. I recently was approved for Medicaid. Excellent. I am due to start with PC. And you also have VA access, right, Justin? Since you're a disabled vet. Justin says, I'm due to start with primary care under Medicaid next week. Excellent. I think I should be sharing treatment progress with my legal team. Yes, you should be. Visits should be reported to your lawyers. I have met with a mental health professional out of pocket out of Medicaid network, do I send those visits? Of course you do. Do you want the SSA to know that you are treating every time? Or do you just want them to have a few records? Everything, everything, everything. Because the frequency of your visits not only speaks to the frequency of how strongly you feel you need the visits, you need help, but it also is what will end up getting the record for that date. No one can get the record for that date if they don't know that there is a date. You follow? So, and for us anyway, when a client reports, and usually they're going to a doctor every week, I would say. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks, but people, when they're in the throes of a disability case, they're usually at their heightened level of treatment because they're really trying to figure things out. And not to mention they have to build evidence, so it's a twofer. And when they put in a certain amount of visits or a certain amount of time goes by, that stuff goes up literally, like, grab the stuff, prepare a letter for the adjudicator. Sometimes it's a phone call with the adjudicator, but other times it's a letter because you definitely want to document it either way. So it's always going to be in writing. And that's when they get word of it. So if you don't send it up, the legal team isn't going to be able to do that now, are they? Because they are not mind readers. And they're not going to be, sitting on the toilet every day thinking about one particular client's case. And I wonder if he went, I'll sit here and wait. It's not how it happens. You have to be forthcoming with information because that will trigger activity. You follow? Hi, Dimple. Yes, I sent it to the eval link. I said, why go to the front page? Okay, Shiloh is clarifying that the work he's doing is four hours a day out of 8 hours. Okay, are you SGA? Have you done the math, Shiloh? Because if you're not SGA, and you find out if you're not, that 4 hours of 8 hours a day, unless you're a very high, if you're a high paid person, yes, you could be over SGA. But if you're like a middle of the road earner, you might not be SGA. Your hours are certainly not reflective of SGA, but your money might be. So check that out and then find out when you last were SGA since you cut your hours. If it was 18 months ago, that could be your alleged onset date. And then you have to tailor the different parts where they ask about when you last worked in your application to reflect that. I would use that as the oldest date of SGA. And then I say in the remarks, work stoppage date, I'm referring to when I last worked SGA. I still work very part-time under SGA. That way they can't say you didn't tell them and you just left that date as if you weren't still working part-time under SGA, de minimis, whatever you want to call it. You follow what I'm saying? It's a CYA. Not doing it isn't going to crush you either. They're just going to figure it out because they're going to see that the IRS is saying you're making money. But I like to put it in there always from the time it's application, so it's right in their face. And of course, have your 821 if you're a W-2 employee working part-time under SGA or over SGA. But anytime after the date you said you were disabled, and an 820 if you're self-employed. Get them done now. You don't have to wait for them to ask for them. They are going to ask for them, and if they don't, no harm, no foul. But they really should be. So yes, Justin, I'm skimming through yours, and I'll send those up. Tasha is so stinking cute. See, she's talking about you. I would like to. Well, she's way over there. I wish you could see her. She's sleeping now on her perch. Eyes closed. Isn't it amazing how they don't fall off? I think they do fall off if they're going to be getting sick and stuff like that. That's why they have to stay healthy. Shiloh says, but they still let me get 8 hours because I would work after hours to catch it. Oh, wait. Now we're changing the story. I mean, you're not changing the story, but we have more details. They're paying you for 8 and you're saying you're really only doing work for 4? No, because you're working after hours to catch up. That's still work. So are you working 8 hours or are you not working 8 hours? It sounds like they're paying you way above SGA because they're paying you full-time wages. And you're still doing the work. You're just doing it at odd hours. You could describe it as a split shifts. Those are kind of weird. Like, you're earning SGA, so you can't file Shiloh if you're earning SGA right now. So put it on a shelf. If you're earning SGA, you're not legally disabled. You're medically impaired while still able to work. Unless you're saying, but I only do that 2 days a week, in which case my hours for the week, it doesn't become SGA. Follow? Lauren Blackwell. I don't think we've met Lauren, have we? It's very nice to meet you. Lauren says, hello, I had a hearing the 2nd of December. It went very well. The lawyer thought it was a win. The judge was understanding. Then it went back to his boss, who's a chief ALJ. I have seizure. Should I be worried? I'm not sure what you mean by it went back to the chief ALJ. I don't think that's how it generally happens. If he did a decision, it could be sua sponte audited. I don't know that that's the ALJ per se. So maybe that's just the way it was explained to you. And I'm not even 100% sure what I'm saying is accurate. It's just not my understanding that it's an ALJ thing. You follow? I think it's a specific federal audit review, and maybe not from the two people who work together, but an other panel, perhaps. But it's a good question. I'm going to try to find that out. So Lauren has seizures. I have 2 to 3 focal tonic-clonic seizures a week. Ooh, has me listed as having medicine resistance to epilepsy. Well, that's not a bad thing in terms of evidence. Have you had the seizures? Presumably, if you have them that often, you've had them out in public. You've had them in the doctor's office. You've had to be taken to the ER. You have those kind of medical records. Or is it just your statements to your doctor that you have them in that manner? Is there any acceptable medical source who has witnessed them? And is there diagnostic testing that shows that you have them this frequently? And I'm not an expert on epilepsy, but see if there's something that reveals that this person has chronic. And another big thing, has your driver's license been medically revoked yet? I should say medically suspended. It's not like a revocation like bad drivers get or DUIs or anything like that. But if it's, and I know this is a problem because I think it's better if it's medically pulled away until you get those better under control. Number one, the law kind of says it's supposed to be. The doctors, I believe, have an obligation. And most of them blow it off, I think, because they don't want to hurt their patients' feelings. And they want to just trust that their patient's not going to drive. Do you drive despite this? I'm going to assume no. If you do, and you probably put it in your function report, and if you said, yeah, I drive sometimes, that's like a smack in the face of I have these unpredictable seizures multiple times a week, but I still go out and drive and put everybody's life at risk. So not saying that's you, of course. I'm just saying, putting it out there for anyone with the same kind of issue. If you're able to do that, then you obviously don't feel you have, severe, seizure disorder. So those are the things that I think that they may look at. What is she doing? Is she doing things that a person with seizures as often as that would deny, not do? Has the doctor felt compelled to medically revoke the license? If he didn't, it's definitely not determinative because of what I just said. A lot of them don't do it, even though I think they're legally bound to, but just that it's not enforced. So it's not conclusive. The old I'm driving a lot business, or driving at all, is kind of that to me, it would be much bigger. But it's not hurtful if he does medically revoke them. That can be helpful. That is a significant sign that he's saying, no, these are unpredictable and dangerous and all that. So sometimes people say, I don't want my license. Well, maybe you should. It'll help your case, because it's very objective and significant action taken. And it's not like you can't get the driver's license back once you get the seizures under control. And if you never get them under control with medications for a sufficient amount of time to get the license back, well, then frankly, you probably shouldn't be driving. Thoughts, everybody? Anybody? What do you think, Lauren? Justin says, for case purposes, is a psychologist worth anything? I don't know. A psychologist is a doctor. And they're very useful when you're not going to be on any mental health medications. But let's say you're on mental health medications from your PCP, you know, because they can prescribe them, whereas a psychologist is not a prescriber. So if you don't have a psychiatrist, which are really hard to come by, psychologists are not that easy either. That's why we're like overrun with therapists, and half of them don't know what they're doing. If a psychologist, that's a doctor. That's high end. So that's good. And then he's not prescribing you, but he knows what your prescriptions are, and your PCP is prescribing them because the PCP can, because he's the MD, like the psychiatrist, but you don't have the psychiatrist. That works out pretty good. And then the biggest thing is that psychologist, I assume he's giving you therapy instead of a therapist. That's even better than a therapist because he's more credentialed. You know, credentials matter. They just do. Thoughts there, Justin? George says, don't forget to spring ahead your clocks this weekend. Oh, is it this weekend? Wow. I love spring. I will say I like fall too. And I don't hate summer or winter, but those are the extremes and you get a little tired of them. Whereas I could probably do spring for almost forever and early fall forever. I could live in an environment like that. Nice thing about springing ahead. Yeah. I think some of you know my husband works like 2.5 hours away, so he's not here most days of the week. Stays out in this little place we got, little manufactured home in a park out there, so he can work at the Capitol and the state capitol. Not at the Capitol, in a department of the state, but in the capital city. And you know, normally he would normally come home Thursday after work, but it's really hard for him to drive at night. He got Bell's palsy about a year and a year and a half ago. It affects so many things with the eyes and the head in terms of it can bring upon a really bad headache. So with spring ahead, sometimes he's like, well, if I can leave an hour early from work, which is his own time, you know, it's taken from personal time, he can get home before dark. You know, summertime is no problem for those few months when it doesn't get dark till 9 o'clock, you know. Otherwise, sometimes he'll actually wait till Saturday to come home and just stay one night because the driving is 2.5 hours when you have to focus diligently on massive highways, lights coming at you in the face. It's a bit of a handicap for sure. Anyway, Bell's palsy, if anyone ever needs to talk about it. We got our house filled with Bell palsy the last year and a half. But it definitely was a better alternative to being diagnosed with a stroke. So we feel like we missed a bullet. There was a lot of things that went on with that. Dawn Johnson's in the house. Hi, Dawn. Hello. Love the video. It's been very helpful. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you. And if you ever have any suggestions, you guys know, definitely post them. Justin says 1 and 2. I'm not sure, Justin, what that means. Twill555 is in the house. Hi, Twill. I'm not sure if we've met. I don't remember the name. Says, hi, Stephanie. Diagnoses include Meniere's disease, vertigo, LCL. I'm not sure what that is. LCL injury? Did you mean like ACL? 50 years old with a cane and rolling walker prescribed. Okay. Well, you've hit the golden number of having some sort of reduced burden on you of proofs, turning 50. So that's positive. It's not conclusive because of the sedentary work idea. And it will depend, as you know, it's going to depend on what was your prior work. Was it sedentary? Can you still do it? Or is there medical reasons well documented that you cannot do that job because, and you have a slew of stuff. So guys, for those of you, Meniere's disease, now, Trill, you can chime in on this if you want. Often comes with ringing of the ears. It comes with the vertigo a lot, right? What else does it come with in your experience, Twill? I mean, you mentioned the vertigo. Is the cane and the rolling walker because of the ACL injury? No. What injury? Or is the vertigo so bad all the time that you're constantly on a rolling walker, but then you have a cane, so maybe that means there's some times that you don't need it. And how much is the frequency of the need for either of those documented in the medical records? 12. Like sometimes it'll say she occasionally needs a cane when she's walking a long distance. It's like that is not helpful. You want it to be where ideally it says needs it for balance, for standing, due to instability, not just for walking. Because if it's just for walking, then they'll say you can walk and you can hold something in the other hand while doing so. That little file you're bringing to the boss's office. Dimple says, it's a little square thing in the top corner. Yes, this little square thingy. Yeah, it looks like a little, someone threw a bunch of pepper on it, right? QR code. Dawn Johnson says, just had a supplemental hearing, had ED. ED? Don't know what that is. Education. Your name is Dawn, so I don't think it's the other ED. You guys know them. If you guys know what I mean. Justin says, yes, most treatment at VA, yes. But with Medicaid, that gives you more options, right? Outside of the VA, Justin, do you think? Without having to try to get community care, I don't know. How does that intermingle? That will give you more options. And ones that you can afford, right? And that's the whole point. Troll says, I'm awaiting ALJ for SSDI after working from home for 11 years in data entry. I'll be 50 in July of 2026. Okay, so Troll, you're not 50. You're 49. I think before you said 50, right? But you're just clarifying that that's up and coming, which is pretty soon. We're already at March, April, May, June, July, 4 months. So yeah, you could get that. I mean, they might be able to consider the closeness with the category H change. I just had a hearing where I argued that. Fingers crossed for all my peeps. So far, it's always gone good, but you get that rare little denial, which burns my britches. Oh, Justin, I just wanted to bring this up too. I just had an award, what appears to be an award, on a case on initial. Very, very fast. But we did all that really anal creation of the application and the function report and the work history report and the plethora and details of the treatment records and communicating with the adjudicator from the get-go on initial. And I believe that makes a huge difference in winning these cases earlier rather than later. And of course, sometimes not winning them earlier means not winning them later. And then, depending on someone's deal, they have to refile. So getting that information, being a diligent reporter to the lawyers, the lawyers that are going to work, if you have the lawyers, which you do, that work on initial and recon and don't just let it sit and fester in its own juices, it makes such a difference, in the overall scheme, in the party of applicants. You can't really speak to which cases it's going to, because it's not going to necessarily affect all cases, I guess, but diligence and proactiveness it changes the whole trajectory of a case. That's all I can say, guys. I just want to see people win on initial at worst recon. I don't like going to hearings. I got to do about 900 hours more work for a hearing. I lose sleep over it for every single one of my clients. If I can get them to win an initial recon, that's my job. That's what I want to do. So I'm telling you, diligence and working up your medical treatment for all the different things that your lawyers tell you would be helpful for your case, for this little piece, for this little piece, for this little piece. It makes a huge difference. Okay? All right. Lecture over. And that wasn't really a lecture. That was just a warm hug. Gail Thornberry's in the house. What a cool name. You sound like an author. written by Gail Thornberry. Who are Social Security investigators? Well, I would say generally speaking, they're the people that are doing maybe the CDIs. When there is credible evidence that there could be a collection of Social Security SSI benefits that are not in compliance with the law. It could be someone is working under the table and not reporting it. Then an investigator might go to, do what they have to do to find out. That's what I would say a Social Security investigator is. They investigate credible allegations. Would that be your belief also, Gail? Gail says, if a public administrator is embezzling awards of Social Security funds, who are the investigators? It's like if someone this is what I'm thinking you're saying, like someone happens to be an administrator of something, then who investigates them? Well, usually investigators are outside of that department. So for instance, you could have a town or a county doing something wrong, and you could have a completely other different set of investigators, like at a higher level, like FBI, come in and investigate them. Because yes, if you're saying, will they maybe protect themselves? Yeah, sure. Yep. Social Security workers have been prosecuted for defrauding in that way. You can call it embezzling. It's all fraud, right? So they definitely look at their own. And I don't know if you're probably aware that the OIG, Office of Inspector General for the SSA, accepts online reportings of when you think someone is committing fraud, within or without the SSA. Fraud, abuse, etc. So you could always, if you know something, obviously you say, I think that public administrator, I think, you probably have to have some way to explain why you think so. And that will determine if there's connection of the dots. Some people just say, he's a jerk, and I think he's stealing. Well, that's not going to hold a lot of water, But if you have some sort of evidence, like whistleblowers within the office that the person works in, sometimes eventually a whistleblower comes out. And that can be really pivotal, I think. Shiloh says, so you are SGA, Shiloh, since 2023. You are working substantial gainful activity. Close down your application. You can't apply right now. Unless it's a typo. Okay? You can't be working that much and then claiming to be disabled from working that much. All right? La Lulu says, hi, La Lulu. I say one or two, usually Meniere. Oh, okay. You guys are talking about Caribbean or, okay. You say either one, Caribbean or Caribbean. And I think, Justin, that was you that said it could be one or two. Sorry, I forgot all about the question. Sorry, I think it's a little dim in here. Usually mirroring what I last heard. Yeah, I bet you I do that too. I bet you, La Lulu, if I were around people that said it the first way, that's what's going to come out of my mouth. If I'm around people that say it the second way, that's what it comes. That totally makes sense. I think that's human nature, right? So you grew up pronouncing it as Caribbean. And by the way, hi, listening when possible between appointments. I appreciate that. And I hope, I hope we get things going there. Twill says, I lost initial consideration with 2 favorable CE exams. I don't understand. I haven't worked since 2021. How do you know they were favorable? Did your lawyer say that? That if they were believed by the SSA, those CE exams, if all the opinions in there, that would be a legal finding of disabled? If that's true, that's definitely something that the ALJ will see. So, and obviously you would probably argue it in a brief. Even the CEs, agree. And I mean, unless you had something like your own doctor completely refuted that. And those are unfortunately the records that go in and have to go in. And I'll just do this little add-in twill. Say you haven't worked since 2021. As you might know, you're about to run out of Social Security disability insured status if you have not already. And that means you will not be able to file again if you lose on this particular case. Unless you start doing a little bit of part-time work, maybe $8,000, $9,000 a year, and keep that DLI pushed out ahead of you. Ideally, you're going to do like all 4 credits worth of work each year. It's very part-time work to do that. Less than $10,000 a year, but otherwise, this might be your last bite at the apple. I don't know if you've had other cases before, or you just waited a long time to file after not working in 2021. People do that. They don't realize there's a term insurance element to it. So hopefully, I hope, fingers crossed for you on this case. You know, I know it's probably stressful. Dolphin says, hi, Dolphin RD. Just checking in to say hello and to encourage everyone to stay strong and not to give up. It took 19 months for me to be approved. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, that's good, positive advice. And so while you're staying positive, and I'm just going to reiterate this because it's twill, if you can keep your DLI ahead of you, and you know you're not improving, you're almost guaranteed to be able to win eventually. If you're not improving and you're disabled from working full-time now, and when I say not improving, I also mean and continuing with really robust, making your hurt body or mind your most important activity. Because if something is interfering with your quality of life such that you can't even work and self-sustain, who wouldn't be putting all their efforts to changing that trajectory, right? Particularly if it affects your comfort, pain levels, and things of that nature. So if you're not holding down a full-time job, there is almost never a reason not to be making treatment your full-time job. And when I say full-time, I don't actually mean 40 hours a week, because that's not, what people do when they're robustly treating. But it is frequent. It is all the majors. Okay. And then you can have another bite at the apple. And by then you're a year older, 3 years older, you're in a different age category, whatever it is. And your medical records are going to be more reflective. So give it some thought. If you can do some gentle, flexible, accommodated, less than SGA work, it is definitely something to think about, whether it's self-employed or otherwise. I know I beat this drum all the time. Everybody here, Twill, is used to me beating this drum, because I just hate to see someone who worked and they're going to get retirement one day, but it's going to be puny because they then don't work for 20 years beforehand. I hate to see them not get SSD because of that recency. I get the reason for the recency. I'm not saying that should change, but I think you need to strategize so that it doesn't affect you. And short of being bedridden, I don't think there's a reason. I really think everybody could do something that's not SGA, so it's not going to defeat your claim, but it's going to make sure that you can keep doing the next round if you need to. User Wendy says, hello again. Hi there, user Wendy. Looks like I have to take Medicare, after being on SSD for 24 months. My private insurance becomes second. Not happy. Now I will pay Medicare 2 OT, then 35 private. Well, I might just suggest that you look at it a little bit more positively. So guys, just to catch you up, I think what she's saying, so user Wendy, tell me if this is true, Wendy. And I'm thinking we talked about this a week or two ago. Wendy has great health insurance already. Was it through a spouse, Wendy, perhaps? Or retirement, through retirement, something like that. And it is not creditable coverage. Once, if it's through a working spouse, it is. creditable coverage and you don't have to take Medicare. However, there's also the potentiality that insurance you could have through your spouse has a rule that says if your spouse is going to stay on our insurance, this extended family policy, but they have access to Medicare, they have to take that, and then we will be secondary. But here's why you should be positive. Number one, that's a really fortunate situation. A lot of people don't have it. You're getting secondary. You're getting like gap insurance, supplement, Medicare sup policy for $35 a month. I have it from my mother. It's an extra $200 on top of whatever the cost of her Medicare is, the traditional. We bought her a sup because you never know when you're going to have $50,000. I mean, 80/20 means you're going to have a lot of bills. 80/20, particularly if you're disabled and have a lot of medical stuff. 80/20, which is like a regular standard policy that the rest of us deal with, is going to leave you in debt. But you have that supplement policy for $35 a month. You're not going to have $100,000 of medical debt from that 80/20, the 20% you have to pay. You see what I'm saying? When shit flies sideways and something happens when you're in the hospital for 4 days. I mean, my gallbladder went a year and a half ago. I don't even want to think about what. There was an ER visit that turned to admission, which became emergency surgery. Then a week later, another ER visit. They sent me home saying all's cool. And a week later, I'm out of state in emergency surgery for 3 days because the gallbladder was already gone, but apparently there was something still going on in there. I can't even imagine. What would that cost? $100,000 easily? And even at 80/20, that would be $20,000 that I'd be responsible for after a deductible, probably. So I walked away with literally, did I even pay $100? I don't know. Because the insurance was actually pretty good, apparently. But that can happen here. So I always love it when people get supplement policies through Medicare. You don't even have to go through Medicare and pay the full normal F plan, Cadillac plan. You have it for $35. And normally, people on disability can't even afford to do because the sub plan my mother has was a senior sub plan. When you're on disability and asking for a sub plan, they can underwrite you and charge you way the whole full kit and caboodle. Look at you. You don't have that. So you are very blessed in this, I assure you. I know you just didn't want to take Medicare at all, but your own private said, heck no, we're not going to cover you if you have Medicare access. You can understand that, right? I mean, they're looking at their bottom dollar too. So I just want to put that little perspective for anyone who's wondering. It is definitely not a bad thing. So maybe you didn't get the A++, you got the A+. It's not something to frown about. I promise. Twill donated $5. Thank you, Twill. That is really generous. And you just popped in for the first time. That's super nice. Goes towards the mission. We have another thing coming towards the mission too. It's kind of in workup mode. I should also say, I think I told you guys, for non-clients that want their DLI without having to call, we have a service where we do the math for you and the calculations with all the quarterly countbacks and everything. If we have a copy of your Social Security earnings statement, it's a prepaid thing. I think it's about $24, $25. But anyway, it's available to anybody, and that'll go to this also. So that's super. And what's interesting right now is just realizing as I was preparing for all these hearings, for some reason, just pure happenstance, I think, the hearings I'm having right now are all of these remote DLI cases, the kind that a lot of lawyers don't want to take. I kind of cringe and know it breaks my heart when people have remote DLIs. That's why I'm always saying, keep your DLI ahead of you by keeping that under SJ part-time work that you can keep your DLI, date less insured, ahead of you. I had a slew, and I still have more to come. They all seem to be at the same time. I must have taken a bunch. It must have been when we had a bunch of outs and got another bunch of those kind of cases that will have trouble getting a lawyer. Yeah, I think like the last 5 or 6 have been remote DLIs. One of them really remote, like 8 years remote, some a little less remote. But anyway, when they roll out, that actually opens up some of the wait lists to take more of those in. So just saying. And a lot of the people on the wait list are already past it. You know, like we have a wait list, but I always say don't wait because it could be a year, you know. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. All these remote DLI cases, the kind that are bone crushing when you're trying to work them up and make the arguments and all that. Oops, my little mouse is backwards. Wendy says, the question I had, and fantastic, I didn't miss you, but some of this bleeped on first. The question I had for private policy is if I become healthy and able to be off of SSD, would the private one get back in? That would be up to the private one. I forget how you had it. If you're only paying $35, I forget the basis of it. Was it a spouse's policy? Your own? You have to speak to them about that. The company did not know the answer. Oh, that's a real shame. I don't know the answer either. That wouldn't be something in my SSD archives because it's not an SSD question. It's so hard because to have to change. But do your research and your due diligence on the situations where your Medicare, even if you're off SSD, can continue for like another 9 years or something. Don't hold me to it. I think it's when you go off SSD, not because you're medically improved, but because you were able to find a job where you could earn more than SGA and chose to. I think. But just know that that is something you want to look into, Wendy, because if you medically improve, probably not, because then you can buy your own insurance and not take it out of the Medicare people. Obviously, that's a very tight fund, as you know. But it does have a sticking aspect to it when I believe it's when a person is not medically improved, so therefore they obviously need the Medicare, and they're only off because they're trying to get back to work and they've gotten back to work in a very special kind of job, but their medical evidence shows that they're not actually medically different than they were before. They just were able to land this special job, accommodated or otherwise. All right. Zantastic says, 2013 denial for physical issues, but have had ADHD, BPD, I am assuming that's bipolar disorder, CPTSD, I think you are talking about chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, MDD, major depressive disorder, GAD, general anxiety disorder, anorexia, IBS, hypermobile spectrum disorder, which is most likely HEDS, Ehlers-Danlos, am I saying that right? Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Still waiting results. Reapplied 125, but haven't completed. All right, I don't see this. Oh, haven't completed function report. This is where he continues on, guys. Executive dysfunction and high conflict, divorce, paperwork paralysis. How do I finish the dang thing when symptoms change many times per week? I would suggest maybe get a lawyer that does it for you. What can I say? You can also, if no lawyer will represent you or you don't want to be represented, you can also get a consult. They're prepaid consults where a professional helps do up your function report in a way that's going to best reflect what needs to be reflected in your case. Those are prepaid. Those are not free, but you know, that's if you don't have a lawyer that does it for you, like a lawyer that represents you on your claim, which I know can be tough, particularly if you're a young person. If you're over 50, that makes it a lot different because it's that whole vocational profile changes. So let me know what your age is, and I'll tell you if you're likely to be able to get a lawyer. I mean, you could still possibly get one. Don't hold me against that. I will say also 2013, if you haven't worked since then, so you're applying for SSI, right? I would think it's fantastic. And not SSD, so you have to be poor enough, you know, not being gifted big amounts of monies to support yourself, all that kind of stuff. If that's the case, the beauty of that is you can always keep reapplying as your evidence gets greater and your vocational profile changes, which that will change based on the fact that years pass you out. You now no longer have past relevant work, and your age range can potentially have different rules that apply to older people and not younger people. Okay. Wendy went on to say, the question I had, oops, I already did that one. Okay, Wendy. Christina is in the house. Hello from California. Hi, Christina. Justin says, when I became unable to work about 10 months ago, I allowed my hair to grow shoulder length, then middle back length. Length hair was reported on some of the SSDI claim form. I now have short hair. They don't care about the length of your hair. So, no. Why would you? No, you don't. They never ask about your hairstyle. Ever, ever, ever. I mean, sometimes people will say, and you might understand this, Justin, they might say, in the question on the function report about caring for hair, they'll say, I grew it out so I can just throw it in a ponytail. Didn't have to worry about bed head, or, you know what I mean? And having to wet it down or get it ready for the day or do it after I take a shower. And then other people say, I keep it very short so I don't have to worry about it. Some people do the shave thing, you know, the military style. Sometimes a full shave like my husband does. And he's not disabled, but he figured in case he's going to go bald, he's going to beat it to it. Anyway, so I don't think you have to report that now. Schwill has a leg injury. Oh, leg. LCL. So what does LCL stand for? I don't know. Let's see. Schwill had one job for 11 years with Abbott Laboratories at home. You know, the work history report, guys, does not ask you if you worked at home or not. So I don't include it. It's not relevant to the work duties. So I don't include it because it's not asked. And I always wonder if optically some humans will feel like you're working from home, particularly if you have mental issues. It's much easier to do that work from home than in the office if you have anxiety issues or this or that. Obviously, we know that that's not necessarily going to be the case in terms of getting work done. There can be mental issues that prevent task completion, distraction, focus, too many errors in the computerized work you probably don't. But I say don't even add that little thing since it's not asked for. If they ask for it, you'd have to tell them. But they don't. So I wouldn't say, and I work from home. Because keep in mind too, and this, I need to drive this point home. People will talk about a job in their past relevant work time period, the 5 years, where they had accommodations. And when they're reviewing whether you could do your past relevant work, if one of your past relevant jobs was with accommodations, even if those accommodations no longer exist at that job that you're no longer at, and they're not offered anymore, the question becomes, would you be able to do that job with those accommodations today? That's a much easier thing for them to prove, or for you, harder for you to prove that you can't, than to do the job without accommodations. So if accommodations are not really official and they're really more ad hoc and, you know, not all the time and not consistent and all that, it's just like maybe your coworker helping you out sometimes. I would not list that as an accommodation. They don't actually ask for accommodations specifically. I haven't seen that question. So be careful about trying to make an easier job included in your past relevant work, because it's going to be harder for you to prove you can't do it. All right. When you describe the job in the work history report, what your job was, you could still obviously be accurate about what you did. But I would not really use the word accommodation since it's not asked for. That's just me. Oh, Christina is so wise. She says, please share the live stream with friends and family. Yes. Thanks, Christina. She's always a super duper promoter. I appreciate it. Wendy says, what is the rule of not keeping a certain amount of funds when on SSD? There is no rule. You can be a millionaire. You can be a billionaire, Wendy. Not being in a facility or retirement home, just being home like normal. Thanks. SSD is like any other insurance you buy. It's, car insurance. Are you still going to get paid your damages if you're a millionaire? If you bought the car insurance, yes, you will. SSD does not depend on how much money you have in the bank. You can be a millionaire. You bought the insurance to get the SSD if you meet the legal criteria of SSD. Poor or rich, it doesn't matter. Follow? It's not like, you can't be rich and get now. You basically forfeited your SSD. That would be crazy, right? Then that would be horrible. So that would take away the worker insurance aspect, and that would turn it into a needs-based program, and that's called welfare. And Social Security is not welfare. It's a little bit of a social aid program, but it's not welfare because you have to pay for it. You work for it, you pay for it, right? All right. Hi, honey. She's a little. You can really see her behind that QR code. Twill says, I've been falling a lot because of the vertigo. Yeah, and the challenge you're going to have, I think, Twill, is getting the proof in the medical records. One thing sometimes people do is every time they fall, first of all, you should be potentially a bad fall. You need to get checked out at the ER every time. When all your falls keep showing up in the ER, just making sure you didn't break anything. What if you hit your head? TBI, concussion you don't even know you have. And short of going to the ER, I would be messaging my doctor every time I have a fall again. Just say, I fell today and I hurt my knee, or whatever you hurt. If you didn't hurt anything, you say, I didn't really hurt anything this time, but I just wanted to let you know. And I would keep a fall journal. Fall journal, little tiny notebook. It could be a dollar store calendar dedicated just to that. Don't put all your other stuff in there. It's just for that. And then in time, you can screenshot those things, send them 3 months at a time to the doctor. It shows that you fall 4 times a week. Yeah, and it would certainly explain the need for a walker. Yeah, I would be doing all that stuff. I mean, I would be sending the journal pieces periodically to my doctor. And then in the end, the medical records, it'll hopefully be in there. And when the Social Security gets them, that journal pieces are going to be part of his records. But if not, I have had it where I have sent a person's journal to the ALJ myself and said, it's kind of like a claimant statement. It's not a medical source statement. It's not in the medical record, but it's historical. I mean, it's showing going back 3 years, particularly if I sent one piece of it 2 years ago, and then 6 months later, I sent in another one while we're waiting for hearing or whatever, or I did it on recon or initial. It can be, it's one of the crumbs to build, right? Okay. We're about an hour in, guys, just so you know. Twill says, my ENT, that would be ear, nose, and throat, and my PCP, that's her primary care provider, stated I can only walk 15 minutes, then I have to rest for at least 20 minutes. Okay, that's good. So apparently did they put something in the medical record to that effect? Fantastic. Oh, eating disorder, ED. So I hope you just thought my humor before was just funny, right? Fantastic. About the other ED. Sorry, it's my humor. And I'm calm here, guys. You just see me elsewhere. Okay. My Cross Ministries. Oh, I love that. Non-mechanical grid considerations is what it's called when you're close to another age group and want to be considered. Yes, we call it borderline age category change. Yep. You're on the border. Close, you know what I mean? Like, you're not quite 50 yet, but you're within a very short period of time before it. And that's when they can do the non-mechanical application of the age category. So borderline's another word for it. Wendy, very, 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 very kind. Thank you so much. A very thoughtful donation. I appreciate that. $10 or $9.99, as they say. All goes to an important set of people here, for sure. But yes, thank you, My Cross Ministries, for sharing that. It's worth everybody knowing, because if you're gonna try to do some research on your own, guys, sometimes the lingo will get you there faster. Borderline age category change, non-medical application of the grids, all that good stuff. Because there is POMs associated with that you can look at. There might be Social Security ruling. Joel says, I get more answers watching you and Jonathan G than my lawyer. I know, we hear that all the time, Jonathan and I. Have you ever been to one of our joint ones, Joel? It's always fun. I have to stay up later than usual. Yeah, to hang out on Jonathan's, and he has to take a lunch break to hang out on mine. It's pretty funny. Greg says, I have a hearing next week. Oh, Greg. Fingers crossed for you. I hope everything's good. How's your lawyer feeling about it? Positivio, I hope. Wendy says, the right doctor should be able to treat vertigo. Hopefully they have diagnosed you correctly. Oh, she's talking to Twill, I think. Yeah. I'll tell you, though, Twill, I don't know what you think. Vertigo, yes, can be helped. There's some medications and stuff. But I don't find it to be, I don't know. I find a lot of people, regardless of treatment, still suffer from it. So it's, I suppose the cause is important, and that might be the difference, but a lot of not well-treated vertigos I see. Because it probably does have to do with what the cause is. And if you can't fix the cause. Okay, Zantastic says, what do you do when you haven't worked since 2008 or 2009 and 3 Social Security lawyers have refused to take your case on? It's because you're not insured, so there's nothing to win for SSD, but you're pretty confident you have enough mental and physical challenges. The question is this. Well, I guess I would ask you, have you already had a denial in your past with the SSA that you never appealed? Or if you did appeal it, was it denied at the ALJ? Number 1. Number 2, you are not insured for any, you don't have any insurance benefits to win right now. So if you've already done your case and been denied in the past, there's a good chance you have no insured window left to have adjudicated because it was already adjudicated. So then the only question then becomes, are you poor enough for SSI? That would depend on like marriage and income of a spouse. That would depend on any assets you have. Do you have real estate? Do you have a bank account? Do you have a 401k? Does it put you over the 2,000 value, resource limit? So and then a spouse's income would count too. So it might not be that they don't believe you're disabled. It might just be that that's fine, you're disabled, but you didn't buy the insurance when you obviously haven't in years. You haven't paid the premiums since 2008 or 2009. So the SSD, unless you've never been denied before, never applied, never got denied for an SSD claim, that's the Title II claim, not the SSI claim. If you have never done it, then you do have one bite at, you have that remote thing I was talking about, the nightmare remote cases, that just you want to win so bad for your person who's so deserving like you, but you can't say to them, well, go back to 2008 and now get this kind of treatment that you should have gotten then, but you didn't, because you didn't know it would be material. So if you have had no case, you have one shot at the apple. One shot at the SSD apple. So if you're doing a case now, Zantastic, make it good. And because you can only rely on what you birthed before, evidence-wise, that's what you need to answer the first question of, did Zantastic become disabled while she or he was still insured for SSD? If If the answer is yes, then they get to the next question of, well, and has Zantastic, does he or she have evidence to prove that she continued to be disabled every year since? Because you have to have the continuity. So that's kind of what your case difficulties are. So if you ever had a big gap of no treatment for a year or two, that can be a case crusher. And that's assuming you haven't had a prior denial that has already shut you off from being able to do an SSD case. And then the remaining thing is, are you eligible for SSI? We do SSI cases. I know some lawyers don't do SSI cases because they're not going to make the same kind of fee potentially as SSD. We don't care about that. So just putting that out there. We do them just as much as we do the other ones. And the beauty of the SSI, Zantastic, is that you don't have to worry about that DLI, date less insured, that was for you probably back in 2013, 2014. At best, might have been before then. And you can always keep all your current evidence is the only evidence that's going to count. That stuff doesn't even matter. It's what you're doing now that's going to count. So if you're being really vigorous now, then it's all the more chance. So, and then of course there's, people have to look at your vocational profile, what rules are going to apply to that case. Does she have the goods to prove those rules? Because the rules that you need at 40 are not the same rules that you're going to have to meet at 55. My Cross Ministries says, and look at that, our Lord and Savior right there with the thorns on. Oh, sorry, I'm interrupting a private conversation. I'm going to leave that out. My Cross is talking to Twill. I love when you guys have little cross conversations because it can be really helpful, I think, to hear from other people who have had the same. You guys can kind of learn from each other or are further along in the process from a claimant point of view. Since I'm coming from the lawyer point of view, that can really be a better, more well-rounded live stream, I think. Greg says, I'm blessed with VA disability benefits, but also applying for SSDI. Is that a thing? Of course that's a thing. Absolutely. We do. I would say, I wouldn't be surprised if more than half of my clients are veterans that are VA disabled. 100%. I wouldn't be surprised. It's still a big burden, but yeah. SSD lawyers definitely take those cases. And as you probably know, and we have a bunch of videos on this, Greg, what you can and cannot expect just because of your VA disability rating. If it's 100%, though, you should be on a more expedited track. Doesn't reduce the standard of proof you need to prove, but should make you not have to wait in line to get, say, an adjudicator as fast. I've seen it not work out at times, too. I had one fellow, we did recently finally win him. I think it was on recon. But you want to talk about how forever it took to get him an adjudicator? It was insane. I had to go to his congressperson, and I was disappointed. I mean, the congressperson did what he's supposed to do, and for some reason that just wasn't budging out there. So we did eventually get it to a win on recon, and I'm very grateful for that. But it should not have taken that amount of time to get the person on board who's adjudicating. I'm not saying they have control over how slow the VA gets in the records or the other doctors, or if a claimant doesn't send in their function report, that's not their fault. But it was the cog in the wheel of getting him in front of an adjudicator, and he should have been bumped to the front of the line with the other people that are bumped to the front of the line. And I don't think that happened, despite all the nagging and getting Congress involved and stuff like that, because it was just too long. It was pathetic. Sorry, but it really got me mad. I get very mad on behalf of my peeps. Chrism Rosales, I don't think we've met. That is a new name to me. Nice to meet you. I have COPD. I think, do you mean COPD? Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and asthma. I'm on oxygen. Would that qualify? It can. It definitely can. It will depend, though. On oxygen, is it 24/7? Are you able to sit down and do a sit-down job? If you're under 50, all those things will really be implicated. If you're over 50, there are some, threadings of needles to get that all to line up. So those finer details would matter. But that is a really bad situation you're in if you're on oxygen. And there is no cure for COPD. Nor is there a cure for asthma, I suppose. So that definitely would seem to me, if you need it, certainly when walking around, I would tend to think that you can't do light work. So maybe the only thing they could potentially get you at would be sedentary work. Now, if you're only occasionally on oxygen, after you've played a basketball game, just kidding, then maybe not so much. But if you're on it daily or all the time or most of the time, I think it can have a big difference. So I think it's definitely something you should consider if you haven't already applied. And of course, as I say to everybody, get representation. Get representation. If for no other reason, guys, you might be the biggest brainiac in the world. And you guys know how to do your research and, learn from the videos and from myself, from Jonathan. Sometimes having that objective person doing the leading is exactly what you need. Because I will tell you, I see very often people that are, I would say it's probably everybody except some people are used to being leaders and being self-directed, and I love those people because I would be one of them. But if you're doing that while you're also subjectively living in your own life experience with your disabilities, sometimes we underestimate what we need to show objectively, because to us it is so clear that this is going on, and we forget that it's not what we say that matters, it's what's going to show up in the medical records. And I see this mistake all the time. And particularly when people come to me after they've been denied. And I think having someone who can say, be quiet, sit down, just follow directions is really what you need sometimes. Just follow the lead, follow the steps we give you, and you'll have the biggest chance of changing the trajectory of your case. And I always say, while there's no case that's 100% sure to win, you want to make the chance as close to 100% as possible. So you want to eliminate all the carve-outs of the weaknesses that you possibly can. And that'll get you as close to, as possible. Here we got the sun again. Jen Me is in the house. Hi, Stephanie. I was chatting with a friend yesterday, and they said you should sue SSA. And I said, that is basically what federal is. But also, is there any possibility of a class action lawsuit? You'd have to speak to a class action lawyer for that. People ask that all the time whenever they feel like they've been jilted. But I'm not one that does that kind of work. I do solely Social Security disability. I don't do civil rights actions, or the federal government didn't do due process, or whatever, whatever the case may be. Because they have, until you've exhausted anyway the appeals process, you're not actually, in a sense, totally jilted yet, because they give you the opportunity to fix that. But yes, there's something called civil rights lawsuit attorneys. So just go find one and present your case and say, hey, may not be a class action, might be a class action. How are you going to pick and choose who's going to be in it? Everyone who thinks they've been jilted, or which is pretty much everyone who's been denied. How would you be able to pick out all the other people that should be in the class that have evidence of being wronged versus denied? That's where I think the difficulty would come in, particularly when everything is so confidential, right? I think it's going to be hard. How do we actually get changes in this outrageous system? Well, what changes would you like? You'd have to be very specific. We are forced to pay into, but tries very hard not to pay out in egregious ways sometimes. See, it's hard for me to answer this, Jenny, because we have a very successful method of doing things here. So we don't have the problem that you're talking about. Not to say it doesn't happen. You know, I just think it's short of very concrete proof. It's going to be hard to prove that someone deliberately tried to deprive you of your civil rights, you know, but as opposed to just making a bad decision, which is different. It's different. And they have that immunity and all that. Or else no one would be in the job, of course, as a judge or whatever. But if you could get a system, I think, where maybe somebody evaluates ALJ decisions in some expeditious manner. How are you going to do that with the human eye? I don't know. And how are you going to pay the lawyers to do it? To get enough of a class of people where it is clear, and to make it the SSA's fault versus a judge making a bad decision or a judge going rogue, which I believe can happen. You'd almost have to show that the same judge has done it numerous times and the SSA and the complaints were made and the SSA did nothing about it, the higher ups. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like overlooking it. I don't know. I honestly don't know because it's not my pay lane. I don't know much about class action suits, but I think you'd have to have something like that. I'm thinking. I don't know. But I would talk to class action suit lawyers and also talk to civil rights lawyers and see where it gets you. Now Lulu says, catch the rest on replay. See ya, La Lulu. Hit like, y'all. Ducking out just as you're getting to my first comment to give you idea of comment to live time difference. It's great how you strive to answer everyone. I do. I try. I try. Yeah. Okay. Twill says, thank you. In Mississippi, they took 2 years to deny my initial. To deny your initial. So that was one where it almost sounds like you didn't get an adjudicator very fast. If that was your initial, that's crazy. I would have been contacting my congressperson. And as I always say, contact the one who's up for re-election because they might have a little light under their butt, a little bit more to help because they want the vote. That's just, doesn't matter the party. Just, that's the one I would pick. Because that sounds like it could have fallen in a crack. And, you know, that happens with everything. Even we all forget a bill sometimes, right? It fell out of our inbox. So if that happened, you need to they're not going to put their thumb on the merits of your case, but they will bring it to the attention of someone who then says, where is this case? Oh my God. Oh yeah, it's been sitting here for 18 months. Oh my goodness. It was categorized as this and it was closed. Who knows? Who knows? It could be closed. You know, it could have been accidentally closed and then they reopened it because they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't give it its due process. Let's adjudicate it. Let's evaluate. Let's get this medical records and boom, denial. You know, the denial is not so much that it is personally, but it's not the bad thing procedurally. It's the fact that it was stuck in it was stuck in the mud, if you will. I took it the Mississippi mud. Is there something like that? Isn't it funny that I'm talking to Mr. Mississippi or Ms. Mississippi? All right. You're welcome, Twill. Thanks for coming up today. She also says, also currently on 9 medications with side effects. Never forget your side effects in your case, for sure. And another thing about medications that can be helpful is if you are having a lot of adjustments to medications, it often shows that they're not working very well for you. They're not doing the job that they were hoped to do. So sometimes just the trends with the medications are something that we can look at too. Just throwing that out there. Particularly, not just for mental health, because it can be physical too, but for mental health, particularly, psychotropics, that can be really indicative of, oh, they're not working. Let's try something new. And that kind of shows the person's not really stable. Am I freezing up? Looks like I am. Okay. Zantastic says, Can it affect your case negatively if your mental conditions have increased and been exacerbated by domestic violence? No, why would that affect your case negatively? It has been documented by psychiatrists and therapists. No, I mean, the cause of the exacerbation being, you know, oh no. Guys, I think I'm gonna, oh goodness. I am literally, this might shut off soon. I have something is going wrong with this new computer, and I'm gonna go crazy with it. But I will get to a lot of these questions separately. I don't know what's going on. It's like a battery problem, and I'm infuriated. It means I probably have to go to Best Buy, and I'm livid about it. So, but I see it's not keeping my charge. This has come up this week. I'm really upset. If you knew how much was spent on this system, it's not good. So if I end up shutting down, guys, that's why. It is. I see it's got the electric zigzag and it's still going down to red. So it's been sucking the battery while we've been doing this, even though it's plugged in. I'm not even on my own dongle because that wasn't working. So I'm not sure what the problem is. I guess now I'm going to have to take tomorrow off and go do a tech day. I'm really not happy. Thank God I have another computer, but it's not plugged in right now. So, but we're going to hear an hour and a half, so I think we're probably good. Let me just see. I'll just keep banging them out. If we get closed off, guys, you know why. That's why. Justin says, if your CE for physical came back sounding like you can do cartwheels and play in the Olympics, and now I know you're exaggerating, does the SSDI claim process always reference the initial CEs? Of course. They have to look at all the evidence, yours that you presented, and the stuff that came up from a CE. Chance for new CEs in the process? They're not going to give you another CE on initial. Could there be a CE on recon? There could be, but they're not going to if your own evidence doesn't suggest something more than their own CE says, right? So that's why taking that recommendation of treat seriously is really important. Oh, I can't believe this battery. I'm so angry. Justin says, if you prevail on a SSDI case, you are awarded back benefits. Your legal team gets their hard-earned representation fee. Thank you for that. Then it ends there. Let's say 20 months later, your health has improved and you go back to work. Do you have to pay back? No. As long as you are not working and not telling them, and then it turns out should have been discontinued months before because you didn't tell them, then you're going to have an overpayment. But no, you would talk to your lawyer about that when you go back to work. And maybe get a consultation if your relationship is done because you already won. You could do a back to work consultation. A lot of lawyers give discounted rates to prior clients on those things. Siren says, I had my hearing last Tuesday and the judge led the hearing, asked about two hypotheticals, and the VE said no jobs in national economy, grid roll, change onset date. Is this a good sign? I think the change onset date can be a very good sign if the judge suggested it. And if the two hypotheticals both produce 0 jobs, I think that sounds very, very good. Proper Dame is in the house, and I don't think we've met. Hello, I was denied an ALJ 10/2023. My attorney filed an appeal and recently denied at district court. DLI expired 12/24. Do I have any options? Yes, you can try to get a new DLI by going back to work part-time in some way that your impairments can allow you to do, working under SGA. And then that will get revamped again. Try to make the credits every quarter and get back in the saddle. If you are financially eligible for SSI, you can refile without that DLI. I always suggest trying to do the DLI work as well. Oh, gosh. I'm just wondering when this is gonna. It's gonna have to pop out. I don't know. But so when we pop out suddenly, guys, because I'm all choppy with what I'm seeing, and I think it's because of that. Yeah, if you're poor enough for SSI, you can file that right away. You could do that while trying to get your credits back. I mean, I'm always talking about this, guys. You know how I am. Like, the DLI. That's the things you could discuss. If, we have prepaid consultations, proper name, if you need a full, hour discussion on this privately. But otherwise, you can research it. And I have videos and stuff, too. All that's for free. All right. The private policy makes me take it. Yeah, Wendy, I bet it does. You want that extra 35%, and the private policy is saying, you have access to Medicare. We are not now footing your health insurance bill. You kind of have to understand it. I have several Oregon clients. Fantastic, indeed. Zantastic also says, do you really do this regardless if multiple SS attorneys have refused to take your case because you didn't realize there was a time limit to apply once you stopped working? It depends on the case, but yes, I do them. I take cases sometimes that other attorneys don't take, and it is probably one of my favorite things to do. It's kind of Chinese torture, though. But I do, yeah, because if the person should be able to have representation, and again, I'm not going to take it if there is no line in sight to award, and the person can't help themselves, because I'm going to look at their old evidence, so it all depends on all that, what I was talking about, like, what does your old evidence say? Have you already burned that bridge by applying and losing it, and now you don't have SSD, and now you're not able to do SSI? I take cases sometimes that some of my colleagues that I'm tight with rejected, and I'm like, I think that's crazy. I'll take that case. Woo! Just had one that won on initial. Seriously. And I don't know if he's here or not. But if he is, he knows who I'm talking about. Wendy says, I know it's just hard to change. Yeah, but you're not really changing. Medicare is accepted. There's not much change except that you have to pay the 202. What were you paying before, Wendy? I'm curious. For your private insurance before you were probably paying something, and you're saying that your coverage was 90/10. Well, now you're still going to have that because your secondary is going to kick in, right? So I think you're going to have good coverage, better than Medicare alone, is my point. I bet you it's going to pay for itself. Zantastic is asking, you didn't realize, meaning you, Zantastic, right? Or the person, if they didn't realize there was a time. Yes, there's a lot of people that didn't realize. All the hearings I had now, none of them realized that there's a time limit. They didn't know. For whatever reason, people don't study up on SSD law. I didn't even know it existed until I was introduced to it, and then decided that's what I want to do after 10 years of doing other horrible stuff. So people didn't know, so it's called a remote DLI case. They pain me to do, or, to see it, because hardworking people, they just, it's like not realizing you have auto insurance, and then you got in an accident, and then you never applied within the window that you have to apply for your auto coverage, and you had a $20,000 car that's now destroyed, and you didn't realize you had an auto insurance, or that you have to report it within a certain time to the insurance company, something like that. Fantastic says, I just realized I could send you lots of likes. Is that true? No, I think it's like on, like off, right? Like, isn't it a toggle? Borderline personality disorder with bipolar tendencies. Yeah, your case is going to really depend on how severely you treat for that. If it's looking like garden variety treatment, then you're going to look like garden variety mild case. All right. Jenny said, did they make a recent change, recent years, and how far back? Yeah, Jenny, I know you know this. God, we were over this ad nauseum when it was coming into law. It's the 5-year look back, not the 15. You know that. I know you know that because you were very on top of things, girl. That was the best thing that ever happened in my whole SS career when they changed that law. It was. Am I looking choppy for you guys like I am for me, or is it just my computer? Zantastic says, 3 have said no. Can you direct me to the prepaid consult, please? I am low income, but need this to support my family post-divorce. Are you 46 years old? Is that what you're saying, Zantastic? That's going to be part of your problem. Yep, that's going to be part of your problem. You can go to joydisability.com, Zantastic, and look in your upper right, and you're going to see a link. You're going to see a thing that says prepaid consultation. You can click on it. You could probably also use that QR code that we're experimenting with today, that this platform offered up. And that'll get you to the SSD consultation, but look in the upper right and you'll see a link for the prepaid consultation. The first one would be for representation. The second one, and you could do both. I mean, we can always take a look at it, but it's going to be hard. Didn't realize I could apply. You don't apply for your mental issues. You apply and include all the things that limit you from doing a Superman or Superwoman job of high skill. Anything that would stop a rocket science job with heavy lifting, you put it in there. How about that? And work with both. Everything. So it could be physical, it could be what you want it all in. Zantastic says, thank you. The info you share is most helpful. I have May videos saved. Oh, that's sweet. Nina says, do you need to report got married but not an SSDI? Heck no. Nope. That's an SSI thing because that's needs-based. You can do whatever you want other than be able to work, substantial gainfully. So go get married. Woo! LaRoche says, hey, good to see you. Hey, Stephanie, I was on schedule for my second appeal, but it was canceled with no scheduled date. What do you mean you were on schedule for your second appeal? If you're trying to appeal, you got 60 days and you either do it or you don't. So when you say canceled, do you mean a consultative examination was canceled? Is that what you mean? Sometimes that can be indicative of something good. Sometimes not. Zantastic says, is borderline personality disorder enough to be considered disabled? Depends how disabling your borderline personality disorder is. Many, many people work with BPD. Many, many people. I know many of them. So how would you show that yours is different? Right? From your medical evidence and stuff. The roadshow clarifies. I received a call from the appeals office and appeal canceled it. What is the appeals office? Do you mean the DDS? Which is not an appeal office. It's where the medical workup is done. Or did you get a call from the hearing office? And what did they cancel? They can't cancel your appeal. You have a right to an appeal. So you have to clarify a little bit, my dear. I can't believe it hasn't cut me off yet. I wonder if it's holding its own. This is crazy. It's not going to, though, I don't think. But Zantastic says, are you saying it's okay to be self-employed, for example, selling plants from your yard, in order to be eligible for SSDI after not working for many years? If you're working SGA, self-employed, no. If you are not working SGA and it's part-time, it can be just fine. Remember, I think you might be alluding to gaining back those credits. Fantastic. So when you're self-employed, working very part-time, you file your tax returns, and if you pay taxes on somewhere between $8,000 and $9,000, that range, a year, you're going to get all 4 credits for that year. Some people go self-employed and they write off every business expense they can. So if they brought in $10,000, they write off $9,500 and they get no credits. So I always say, and there's other videos on this, you don't have to write off every business expense. You know, be willing to pay the taxes, which will be include the Social Security taxes, and get your credits if that's what you want to do. And just file without maybe being overly intent on paying the least tax you can under the law. There's no law that says we have to write off every possible business expense under the sun. In fact, the IRS usually probably prefers we don't, I'm guessing. So in this case, it can be to your benefit not to. You're going to have to pay the taxes on it. So when you make that $10,000, keep some of it for the taxes, you know, and plan on not writing off other business expenses. So you do have, you know, $8,000 or $9,000 tax. That would be my thing. And yes, it could be, you know, doing flea market work. Make sure you can back up, you know, if they want to see proof that you made the money, that the money went into your account. You filed a tax return and paid the taxes. If you get a 1099, so let's say you do gigger work with a big company that lets you work flexible and stuff like that, the 1099 can be helpful. You don't have to write off any of the business expenses if you don't want to, and then you'll get those credits. That's something just to think about. Do your due diligence, of course. Fantastic says, why don't they tell us this when we get our first job? Oh, you think your employer is supposed to be your mama? I started working in 1996 and didn't learn that SSD was work insurance until 2025. I kind of think they should teach it to us in high school. I don't necessarily think our employers are supposed to be our mamas and give us, you know, teach us. My kids obviously know about it because I drill at home. They don't really care. They don't think they're going to ever be disabled. You know, like the human nature. But they know how I breathe, eat, and sleep it, so they have no choice but to know about it. And they all work as teenagers, so they're already insured SSDI right now. My kids. Granted, if they stopped working, it would run out. But yeah, I kind of wish they would teach it in high school, like maybe senior year. Maybe it would be part of that. Whatever. It's practical stuff. They've taken a lot of that out. I mean, come on, you don't even have to know how to write anymore. So just sign your name. But I mean, it's a shame because people get deprived of this. You know, I see it all the time. That's why I had those videos out about TLI and, you know, I remember one particular video was about stay-at-home parents who, even after, like when they're having the kids and they stay on for the first 5 years, that's enough time of not paying in where they now are uninsured in year 6. And if something happens, they don't have SSD, and they're obviously their retirement 40 years from then is going to be nothing. If anything, if they even, you know, at that point are insured for retirement because they might have blown that. So I'm always saying, listen, if you can at least do that minimum seasonal stuff, even if it's just for 2 credits a year while you're raising the kids, that can keep you in insured status, at least always 1 quarter out. 4 is better, much better. And then some people, even after the kids go to school, they, you know, I keep the house and eat bonbons, you know, whatever. Like they're not actually taking care of the kids at home, but they're not working either. And they could be working part-time. And this would never be a problem for them. And then so many times they don't, and they pay the price later, and their family pays the price. Because if they were able to get SSD, now their kids that are still minors would have something coming in. You're almost saving for college for them in the meantime. There's so many ways to look at it. I can go on and on. I'm like a broken record. Fantastic says, Frequent subluxations, stress fractures, oh boy, and muscle pain. What is the diagnosis there? Fantastic. Stress fractures and muscle pain. Pretending to be stress fractures. Do you have like an osteoporosis and stuff too? Wow. Osteogenesis imperfecta? As they more frequently urgent care, but I'm embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. I can't help but to feel like they think I have a motive. Screw them. I mean, you got what you got. It's your burden, not theirs. They make $1 off you, actually. So, but if you have good insurance, and if you don't have good insurance because you're too poor, get Medicaid and start treating really, really, really aggressively. I mean, make it like your mantra. Make the part-time gig work or whatever you're going to do to get your credits back. You know, do that like 10 hours a week at best. At best. And then make the rest of your time devoted to your medical workup for evidence purposes, if nothing else. Hey, 20P's in the house. Woohoo. Since I didn't have to see any judge and I had 2 CE exams, but did not have the mental CE after they looked up my medical, I was approved shortly thereafter. I'm assuming I met a listing. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. Can't say for sure, but it could be RFC. This doesn't have to be a listing, but often it is. Mark Benson is in the house. Hi, Mark. I don't think we've met. Hello. Is 49 years and 6 months at the time of ALJ hearing considered borderline? Is it definitely into the 6 month? I would make the argument. I just did a similar one like this the other day. It was a little, I think it was like 5 months. I mean, 7 months. But I would make the argument at 6 months for sure. The judge will decide. Tony P says, also, would it be smart to go to office to find out info on my case and what to expect on SSD? Go to what office? Your lawyer's office? Sure. But if you're going to go to your field office, no, they have no clue about your case. If you're trying to find out your diary date, you can make a phone call. Is that what you're talking about? They're not going to educate you on what to expect on SSD. They have brochures, though. Like it says, if you go back to work, you must notify us, all that kind of stuff. Fantastic. Yep. Fantastic. Totally got it. Awesome. Okay. Jen Me's talking about the issue she has with how she was treated by, I think, a judge. I have more info on my lawyer's hearing meeting with the federal judge. A federal judge. A lawyer from SSA was there to defend their side. Okay, yeah. Because you took the case to federal district court, so the SSA is going to defend its position, usually. And then the claimant, which is you, the lawyer for you, will defend theirs. She apparently was completely unprepared. And when the judge was asking her to clarify why first ALJ did certain things, she kept saying, I will defer to counsel on this one. Oh, yeah, so she just had to go, you know. They have to show up. So here's what I'm thinking is probably the most likely scenario. You get a remand, and they'll send you back, and you get to do your hearing again. And probably with a different judge, maybe. But yeah, so they're just saying the judge had discretion, and then this one's saying, why didn't you do this? I don't know. You know, you would have thought the AC, well, this argument may not have been brought up to the AC. Who knows what your lawyers did there. But yeah, I'm thinking, you know, if the court asks that question and the SSA lawyer says, yeah, we don't know why the ALJ did that error. You're basically saying he did it, and then as long as it's something that's not entirely harmless to the case, to the end result, No device is connected. Can you guys hear me? Let me just try these settings. I just had to grab my other computer. I don't know if this is gonna camera. No. What about? I don't know. There we go. Hey, can you guys see me? All right. I don't know. Now, what's going on, guys? I do not know. I do not know. I do not know. I'm just seeing if I can get it in here. I think we're on, right? That's nuts, guys. That was my battery. Can you guys hear me? Ooh, am I connected here? Let's see. Yes. But it's weird. So I'm on my old Mac system. Oops. And I don't know what's going on with this battery, guys. This is like my workhorse. You know? Anyway, I'm going to get through your questions, and then I'm going to have to. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of questions here still. Oh my gosh. Guys, I'm just trying to find out where I left off question-wise, because I'm on a totally different. Okay. I don't even know where to start, guys. There seems to be a ton of questions here. And we're like 2 hours in, aren't we? Can you guys tell me if I'm going to scroll all the way down now. If you can hear me. Dimple, you said, yeah, you're back. Can you also hear me? At least he wasn't in a hearing when you're back. I know. Then we go to phone. When there's so can you guys hear me? Just say if you can hear me. Oh, Deli, I see you. We can hear and see. Okay. All right. Let me go back up. All right. I'm going to have to bang through these. This is totally insane. I don't know what to do with that. I'm so upset. That, guys, I invested so much in that computer, and I don't know. I'll have to really just do some research and take it to my people. But that's a nightmare. All right. So anyway, we were talking about Jen Me and the SS Lawyer. You know, not her fault. She probably agrees with you, but she's paid to just show up. That's her job. Twill says, I'm starting vestibular therapy next week. That's good. The vestibular tests, ENT, say that causes Meniere's disease. I had 7 falls last year. 2 are pretty bad. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if you would have fallen more, except you probably were always using furniture and stuff to get around your home and all that. Is that likely correct? Bluetooth. Oops. I put the Bluetooth on. Oh. I don't know which. Well, you guys can hear me, so I'm not even going to worry about the headphones then. If you hear dogs barking at some point, you know why. Zantastic says, if you have mental and physical symptoms, is there one that is more important to highlight? Did you say you were 46, Zantex? You've got to do all of it. You know, everything, it depends so much on each case, believe it or not. And, you know, mental is very, very hard to win on if you are not like in need of being in a facility or being in a partial residential, like, you know what I mean? It's very hard to prove that you're that bad if you're able to get about your community. You know, they'll say simple, unskilled, third grade, minimum wage job, go get it, without dealing with the public and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just telling you, it's not easy. I'm trying to get my mouse going just so I don't have to keep reaching up to the computer. Come on, mouse. What? All right, well, the mouse is working, but well, so it says, but it's really not. Okay, we'll just ignore that and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Fantastic says, appeal denied, I think. Even for SSI, I can't seem to complete the function report. Need someone to help. Yes, I am poor enough. Once I get divorced, financial abuse for over a decade. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. If you got denied for physical stuff but didn't include mental, yeah, you definitely have to include the mental for sure. What else we got here? They're going to deny you if your medical evidence does not show that you cannot do all 12,000 plus jobs that exist in the economy. So that's an arduous job to prove. It's hard. It's hard for lawyers to prove it, and it all depends. The proof is only with your medical treatment. So you're either just giving a lot of fluff. You know what I'm saying? So Fantastic says, I think I was, but mentally, not necessarily physically. I'm just going to close the door. Be right back. Because that's going to be particularly loud, I believe, since it's not going through the headphones. Although you guys can always hear it anyway, but you know, I got the zoo. VA files. Justin's talking to Greg. Yes, that's kind of true. And they're a real pain to read because one visit is like 100 pages. And it's for this much information. Judges hate it too, I think. Fantastic says, would you do an SSI case for Oregon? I handle SSI cases in Oregon, yes. However, that doesn't mean we have openings in your category. So you'd have to send out, Fantastic, you could fill out that SSD eval form. It is, from the things you've told me, I have a feeling that's a full category. And it's waitlisted, I'm just saying. Which is why I said if you want to do a consult, you can, but it's hard when you're 46. But what you do now can help you win now, potentially, you know, on whatever stage you're at, or a next thing for SSI. And I hate to say it, you'll be 50 before you know it. Sometimes it's the long haul. But you have a variety. Well, I don't want to mix up people's impairments that you've been speaking of, so I'm going to hold off. If you want to send the SSD eval, the free eval, that's in the upper left of the, QR code, the website, you can. Let them know. Let them know that we spoke. They kind of determine whether we have a wait list. And honestly, we try not to violate it because it wouldn't be fair to other people. But if you put in that you spoke to me on here, they will give you, and if you fill in all the details, they'll give you a little bit more insight as to what maybe you can strengthen up or what you should be doing. Maybe, you know what I mean? Give you some recommendations to consider. It's not really legal advice because they don't represent you and they don't have all your details, but some possible recommendations. All right. Justin says, I'm 100% P&T. I'm living your scenario. Oh, Greg. User Wendy says, I know in the past you've talked about your cute birdie. Here she is. She's cleaning herself or something. My very best friend since junior high has bird feed company China Prairie Products. Well, that's an interesting name for bird food. That's interesting. Do they get their bird food from China? I'm guessing. I don't know if it's going over too well these days, huh? Big Ty is in the house. How you doing, bud? Is there a law stating if an, you said AFJ, I'm thinking you mean ALJ? A law stating if an ALJ says your function RFC was sedentary at 49 when I was denied. If I apply again, will I still have the sedentary RFC? Not necessarily. You could have a stronger RFC. It could be light if you seem to have improved. So you really want to make sure that doesn't happen through medical visits. And if it does continue at sedentary, at least at 50, you've got one of the prongs met for gritting. You just have to make sure you meet the other prongs. You follow what I'm saying? Let's see. Which Fantastic says, which can we just acknowledge how messed up the fact is 50% disabled veterans? You talking about the fact that half of my client base is veterans? That's only because, honestly, it doesn't mean 50% of all veterans are disabled. I think I have a heavy weight on it in terms of my caseload because I'm very pro-veteran, and I think a lot of veterans just prefer to use a lawyer that is that way. You know, pro-veteran, pro-America, if you get my drift. So I think it's might be an affinity like that. It's not that, you know, there's, I don't know how many, I mean, my husband's a veteran. He works. He's not disabled. I mean, he's, you know, got issues, but he's got them anyway. You know? So anyway, but yeah, I'm with you. It's fantastic. I thank everybody for their service. From the bottom of my heart. Sniper Shot 71 says, I have my ALJ hearing in May. My ALJ has a 14% full approval rate. Wish me luck. Yeah, that's an exciting challenge. You can do it. You know what you got to do. 14%. Yeah, that's why I don't look at that stuff. It psychs you out. You don't want to be psyched out. Sherry Romero is in the house. Hi, Sherry. I don't know that we've met, have we? I'm 30 and I have mental and physical problems. I'm at ALJ. My hearing is in June. Any advice? Yeah, build up your medical evidence stronger than it's ever been, would be my advice. To prove that you can't do a simple third grade job of any kind. No thinking, no public, no stress, supposedly, but don't we all think that there's stress at every job? So, but you get what I'm saying. '30s is hard. It's a hard age. Twill says, thank you so much. I've never participated in a live Q&A. I'm just feeling very discouraged, but I'm still committed to my treatments to win my case. Yes, don't get discouraged. There's persevere. And if the DLI is an issue, you know, just start laying out a plan. You know, I always say plan A, plan B, plan C, to get where you need to be, and creativity and thinking outside the box, you know, to follow, so you can, you know, use the laws to your benefit while staying within them. You know what I'm saying? You just got to know them so you can chart a path. So don't feel discouraged. Fantastic says, where would you add the meds not working issue if they need to be readjusted frequently? Well, it's going to show up in your medical records. Your doctor is going to say changing his this to this, or upping this to this, and then adding this, taking away this because it made him vomit all the time, or taking away this because it made him hallucinate, or, you know, It will be in there. And then when you're in your function report, you can describe, you could put it in, I'm trying to think what section. I think there's a section about the side effects. You could put it anywhere there. You could put in your remarks even. My medications regime has been adjusted frequently for the last 2 years because I cycle through this, or, you know, each one's not working, or the side effects were too egregious, such as this one, this, you know, you can get it in there. And then, of course, it'll be in there when the judge gets it. You know, and maybe it's still a problem, maybe it's not, but you can at least, you know, discuss it. Or not, if it's in there clear enough. Shiloh says, if you don't have exact dates you stopped working, will there be an issue or they can pull it up? Exact date's not such a big deal, but somehow they can't pull it up. They didn't follow you with a camera. I know there is something, you should really try to think harder about it. Look at your last paycheck. You can even go to your employer and find out. So there's things you can do. You can call your employer and say, I need all my pay stubs for 2023. And, you know, you'll see when you stopped working from that, because you'll see, you know, when your last paycheck was. DLI 2028, that used to be really far off in the distance. Oh my goodness, now it's 2 years away. But you can find out generally. I mean, you could, the month that you left is the most important thing, more so than the date. However, sometimes the exact day one stopped working is important if their prior work episode was just a couple months due to disability. They'd been out before, and that's how we can connect it to make it, you know, prove that it could be a failed work attempt. So sometimes the exact days really do matter. But if that's not an issue here, as long as you have probably the month, it's fine. But try to just get your pay stubs from your employer. It's easy peasy. I don't know how long they have to keep them, but. Or if you got direct deposit, you look at your bank statements. There's many ways to skin that cat, Shiloh, get that information. Fantastic says, it's hard to know where one mental issue ends and another begins. Okay, we're over the 2-hour mark, guys, but I know I bumped out for like 10 minutes. Regarding the issues that only became visible during a domestic violence marriage. Well, gaslit so much, I don't know what's permanent, what might go away. You don't have to know what's permanent. You only have to know what you're feeling now. So hop to it. Particularly with SSI, it's what's going on now, what you're treating for, and how much you're treating for, and how much that stuff will prove that you can't do any job in the universe. Not the universe, but, you know, that exists in substantial numbers in the national or regional economy. So it's a tough, if you're raising children, if you're negotiating your community and doing all your errands, it's going to be hard to prove. It's going to be hard to prove. I don't know what you're doing, but. And My Cross Ministries, I'm just going to shout this one out because I think it's wonderful. He says, he or she says, praying for all of you, off topic, but keep your eyes on God and trust He wants the best for all of us. There is that plan. It just might not be the way we think it should be, right? But it is. Shiloh says, I was also given unemployment for a few months, so they will be able to see that as unemployment and not from working. Will they be able to? Yes, that should show up in a separate area on their report. So yes, that should. But you can mention it in your application. You know, say, I stopped working on this date. I received unemployment till this date. You know, if you just want to drive it home. But yeah, because there's a gosh, Shiloh. I mean, I just call her Shiloh. There's a dog out here called Shiloh. So sorry, Shiloh. I wasn't talking to you. And I actually wasn't talking to the dog either. We got Tasha, we got Shiloh, we got Maya. Sometimes I say Milo when I'm talking, like I mix them all up. When I'm talking fast and running around. Yeah, because there's not Social Security taxes taken out of your unemployment check because it's not work activity check and they know it. So it's not going to show up in the same area of the report as the ones they have to consider. So that's It's not a big deal. Let's see. This is why you rock. Why do I rock? Tell me, please. I need a pat on the back. Just kidding. And Dimple, you're so sweet. I agree. That's why she rocks. Hands yellow, heart red. What does that mean? Oh, that was from before. Do you see a consistent line of hearts on your screen? Oh, I don't know. Do it again. Wendy said $72. What's $72, Wendy? David Lara is in the house. I'm helping a relative with SSDI because I thought it would be a straight approval for him. He was let go after having a heart attack in 25. He's 55 with heart problems. CKD, I think he's saying chronic kidney disease, stage 4, high blood pressure. Yeah. Did he have a sedentary job before this happened? Or a light job at best? He probably did. And so that's probably part of it. That doesn't mean he can't win. You just have to get him to do the proper medical follow-up. I would suggest you look at musculoskeletal at 55. He probably does not have joints, back, knees, ankles, shoulders, neck, but particularly like back, knees, hips, feet. I think he did when he was 20. So if he works them up a little bit, that will prove that they're not like he was 20 and that maybe he can't do a job, his prior job because of that. Maybe he can't sit that long if it's a sit-down job. Or maybe he's having, a little bit mental, cognitive fog and stuff. A lot of these kind of conditions you mentioned create that in addition to our age 55-ness. And maybe his job was brainiac and he can't focus enough to do that job because you have to eliminate that prior job. And if he had a more sedentary or light job, that's something you have to prove because a heart attack doesn't prevent sedentary work, right? It just doesn't. Neither do heart problems, neither does high blood pressure. They might kick out those heavy manual labor jobs, but what are you going to do about this other one? So I think there's a path to be had, but you just have to figure out what it is, or get him a lawyer, that knows what they're doing. If he wants a lawyer, and if you want to help him, you could fill out that free eval form above. Mention David that you could put his his information in. And none of it's like personally identifying information to speak of, and mention your screen name here, and they'll send it right to me, and I can give a call. That's for when you're looking for representation, though. It's not going to be for just like a free consult or anything otherwise. It's literally to take that path. Okay. David V8, I love V8 by the way, states appeals counsel status disappeared from main page. Why? Maybe they made a determination, or what do they call it? A decision. That would be my guess. Unless it's just a technological glitch. Fantastic is 46. Yeah. You're not going to be 46 forever. So fight for it now, Fantastic, while also planning the path to get SSD insured again. And you will be 50 in time. I know that's a long marathon we're talking about, but you have to live anyway, so you may as well do it, right? And that way your future can look different than your present, For you could do this. You could persevere. You've been through worse, right? Sniper Shot says, 54 years old, ALJ hearing is May 19th. I'll be 55 in July. Can I be put? I think it could be something that would be considered borderline, as noted above by ministries. borderline age, non-mechanical application of your actual age of 54, because borderline could allow them to go non-mechanical and consider you 55. So fingers crossed for you there. LaRocha said, Stephanie, I was scheduled to go to my second hearing. I had my first hearing in March 2023 for widow's benefits. Now I'm 54 and a half. So you're trying to prove you're disabled, right, LaRocha, for widow's benefits? Did it get a remand? Is that what it was? Siren says, on first hypothetical question, VE said there were 2 jobs I could do. On second one, judge went over my medical source statement and said, VE, would I still be able to work? And VE said, no jobs in national economy. On the first hypothetical question, VE said there were 2. Oh, so you did have 2 jobs noted in one of them. So now the big question is, does the judge put you at the first hypothetical or the second hypothetical? And I think you also said that you changed your alleged onset date. That would be important to me if the judge asked you if you wanted to do that on the record to the day before your birthday. Otherwise, it might not be so meaningful. LaRocha says, I applied for SSI, SSDI on my record since 2012. Okay, and you have not prevailed since 2012? Is that it? And now, that's a long time ago. You're trying to get widow benefits since you probably do not have SSD insured status anymore either, but you could get it under a deceased spouse's benefit. I mean, his or her work record, right? And if you could prove you're disabled at 54, you said you're 54 now? Yeah, that's a definite in. You still got to prove you're disabled under the 54-year-old standard and or 55 or whatever, the appropriate age application will be. Okay. At my hearing, this is Sirens. At my hearing, the judge did change my onset date and said I met grid rules for being 50. Awesome. So, you got a bird in the hand, it sounds like. LaRocha says now still not getting benefits. Isn't that because you didn't prove yet you were disabled? LaRocha, or am I missing something? Now I'm confused. You are very welcome for my time. Wednesdays are my favorite day to be with you guys. LaRocha says, by the way, my diagnosis is heart disease and autoimmune plus diabetes. Starts to add up. It sure does. And I bet you at 54, your body joints are not like they were when you were 20. I mean, think about it. When we're 20, technically, we could stand on our feet all day for an 8-hour shift. We could probably lift 50 pounds multiple times throughout the day, lugging loads of concrete. Not necessarily 100 pounds, but 50 pounds. We could, and did, speak to the public. That's a mental part. But so physically, we could sit all day. We could stand all day. We could do everything. When we're 20, I mean, think about it, guys. Don't you wish? I don't want to go back to being 20. I happen to like my life better now, but I wouldn't mind having my body I had when I was 50. Yeah, for sure. I was quite jockish. Fantastic says, LOL, my mom literally died 2 months after I turned 16. Oh, baby. And started working. And she was on disability while I was growing up, so it probably slipped her mind to inform me. My parents didn't even know. My mother was off the boat from Sweden, had no clue. None. And my father, no clue. No clue. So it's not even that you're saying your mom was on disability while I was growing up. So, yeah. And plus, she didn't think that you'd get disabled. We think of our children. No parent ever wants to think like that, right? So that could have been a little bit of that in there too. But yeah, she's probably distracted, not thinking, Okay, LaRocha, now we're getting more neurological issues too by one of SSA doctors. Well, then you need to get your own neurologist if you don't have one. If someone's telling you, a doctor said, you got a neurological problem here, nerve damage, whatever, add that. I'm telling you, that's physical. And at 54, you want physical in there. You can't do grids without physical. Now, you got the autoimmune, but that's a lot of subjectivity a lot of time. So it's really hard to quantify. Dimple says, When it comes to the SSDI stuff, I don't really mind the fact that I'm pushing 60, right? We got to grab all the benefits we can get, right, Dimple? Yeah. I tell you, I'm pushing 62. I got like a year. I'm like totally rock on with it. I think it's great. I felt the same at 52. I was like, bring it on, you know. 40 I was pretty good too. 30 I was not looking into that. To me, that was suddenly I was becoming old, but middle-aged, you know. But 40, between 30 and 40, I got married to a great guy. Never thought I would, you know. And I had my kids at 40. 39 and 40, or 39 and 41, or whatever it was. So that was like, to me, a amazingly wonderful gift, you know. So yeah, the decade, and then after that, I'm just like, bring it on. It's so much better than trying to run away from it, I think, you know. The hypermobility, Ealer Daily, yeah, that is big. That actually, with your mental, if you are getting a very, very frequent, constant, I don't want to say constant, but very frequent, if you need like therapy very frequently, or you know, decompensations mentally, and then you throw, that's a really bad physical disorder. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but the hypermobility syndrome, that is painful and can be really disabling. So with the combination of all of them, fantastic. I think I just want to see you get SSD. Now, keep in mind too, if you file for SSI, this is just a little avenue for Zantastic here, but it can help other people. If you're not insured for SSD, but you can file for SSI because you're poor, maybe you're living with like adult children or some other family member, because how are you going to support yourself if you can't earn money and you don't have a spouse supporting you, right? So you have to figure out something. You can be on SSI, work under SGA, keep your SSI. It's going to be a small portion left that you're allowed to keep, but you'll have your SSI, you'll have all that working earnings, and you can then, while you're on SSI or fighting for SSI, eventually get enough credits to flip to SSD. Yeah, and I don't know how robust your work history was before. You haven't worked in a really long time, so your SSD might not be that strong. And it could be that your SSI is still going to have to pay a little bit, even if you went SSD. SSD, if it's under that 900 and something, you're going to have a little bit of SSI to bring it up, which is the thumb on your neck. So you don't have to take the SSI, but you can. Or the SSI will go away if you're still able to work, even if it's your own gigger thing. You know, you got a skill and you could do it, you know, 2-3 hours a week, keeping below SGA. You can not only change SSI to SSD, you can grow your SSD to some degree, because you're now adding all that extra, you're growing your average monthly lifetime earnings, which is what your SSD calculation and all Social Security is based on. So I don't know. That's always my A, B, C, D, E, F. Come on, there's all these little paths we can take to make it better. You know, we got hopefully a few decades left to live. So, you know. Temple says, generally, I prefer to think I'm in my late 30s, in my dreams anyway. Well, mentally, right? We're still kids. That's good, though. That means you're young at heart. And I think that makes a big difference to so many things. The attitude makes or break our health sometimes, too. You know, we get beset with things that are out of our control, but if we have the right attitude, it can make a big difference, I think. Mark Benson says, if you lose hearing in appeal and at time of second hearing you are now 50, does that age grade rule apply? Of course. However, are you still insured? Is your DLI in the past, back when you were in your 40s? Because they have to find you disabled back then under those rules. So they can't prove you're disabled then by back when you were 46. And I'm just making up the numbers. If you are not if you let your DLI run out. So even though you turn 50 now, that doesn't mean they could find you now at 50 disabled. But if you don't have a disability insurance because your DLI ran out, you know what I'm saying? But if you are still insured for SSD now at 50, yes, they could find you're disabled at 50 under the 50 rules, and you happen to be insured then too. So wonderful. If it was not the case and you were poor enough and you had the SSI claim going on, they would find it, disabled, and you get SSI. But hopefully your DLI, and I don't know if we went over, I don't know if you mentioned it before. There's so many comments going back and forth. I don't know who's still insured and who's not. Okay, I don't know what that's about. Dimple says, my mind thinks I'm in my 30s, but my body thinks I'm in my 80s. You are so funny. This lady has the best attitude, guys. I'm not kidding. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm still getting through the things from before I got booted. I see My Cost Ministry is saying she's gone. Yeah. Battery died. And I'm like, gosh, this is going to be my fun next couple of days. It means I'm not going to get squat. Well, I still have my regular computer, but I got to make all these appointments now with the really good computer. So what is going on? I have Apple Care, but still, it's the time that I don't have it to use it. Thank God I have my old workhorse. Thank God. Okay. Fantastic. Individual diagnosis per doc visit. Stress fracture in foot, potentially from ED issue or hypomobility. Subluxation of shoulder. That all sounds right in there. Fantastic. All right. Cross Ministries had wished everyone a blessed day for all, which was super sweet. He or she probably had to go. Yes, I did warn you. Okay. Andy Griffith was in the house. Hi, Stephanie. Just wanted to give a shout out to our U.S. military, to all they do. I'm with you. We are so blessed with our freedom. I'm so with you, Andy. They are doing fabulous, very dangerous stuff, very important stuff, obviously. So praying for them every day, overtly, not just saying it. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Fantastic also said, my alarm I set labeled finished function report is going off, but I can't stop watching this to fill it out. Go fill it out, Dan. You're so funny. Dimple, on a positive note, at least you wasn't in a hearing when your battery croaked. I know. But, there are times when the judge's stuff goes awry, and then we all have to go on phone. It happens. It happens less now, I think, than when we first started doing these a few years ago. What was that, 2021? LaRocho says, Stephanie, does the grid apply for me also? Yes. I'm sorry about sending my questions in segments. The grid applies to whatever is applying now. So if you have an SSD date that you could have SSD now, it would apply now. If you're doing widows, and it's okay that you send it in segments, everybody does. If you're doing widows survivor benefit, as long as you can prove you were disabled within 7 years in front of or in back of the passing of the spouse, and you're between 50 and 60, then you are not insured under your own record, but under his. So it's really good. All right. Mike Cross, you were so good at keeping me informed. I didn't see all the details back when I hopped on. I just saw one person say, yeah, we can hear you. That's what I was like, all right, let me scroll back up and get to the questions. Yeah, Jen May, I think she did. Because when we work for somebody else, I remember having to do things in state court before I did SSD. And I had to present arguments that my boss made me present. And it was sometimes very uncomfortable. So, they, for whatever reason, and I do think it might be they always have to show up, but I think they could have just acquiesced. I don't know. I'm assuming there's a way they can cut out and not, pursue, and then voluntarily let it go back for a remand, I would think. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. Yeah, Twill, about without my cane holding on to stuff, it would have fallen much more. I would make that maybe clear in a function report, that very high fall risk, have fallen multiple times, sometimes with significant injury. And remember, if you're going to get significantly injured, I expect to see you in the ER, right? X-rays. But you can say, like in the why can't you work, number 5, what things if I'm a high fall risk. Even at home, I need to use furniture to get around my home safely because I have a very bad vertigo issue and I am at risk of high fall. I fall, you know, it sounds like you said, did you say seven times in 1 year? But I think you got to also look at not when you have to consider a fall as I have fallen. Let's say you catch yourself. If that's even possible when you're having vertigo, I don't know. You could have more falls than you're actually realizing, but you fell on the couch and you didn't get hurt. So you didn't even consider it a fall. You call it a near fall. Technically, I think that's a fall because if the couch wasn't there, you would have cracked your head open. Just something to think about. You know, but many times I fell on something light, didn't get hurt, you know, but then the ones you do get something where you could have fractured a bone or hit your head, I think you want to, you know. Yeah, I get it, Jen. Jen says, I'm that bad off mentally. I'm not even doing this stuff for the case, like Xantastic. I had no idea I was paying for this when I started going to the hospital. And yeah, darn dogs. And I don't have, these aren't hooked up to this computer. I don't know. I'm so aggravated. But I will persevere and get this running again. My lawyer asked the VE a question and the VE said no jobs. Okay. The lawyer asked the VE and the VE said no jobs available. A question, that means 1, no jobs available. He ended the hearing almost immediately after the VE said this. Also, we did not discuss my severe sleep apnea, only the neck injury. Okay. There was 1 question and there was no jobs. I think that sounds very, very, very positive. Can't say for sure, but I think it sounds very positive, Mark. Mark says, does this sound like my lawyer says it sounds good, but I'm not fond of him because he said I may have mental issues. Don't we all have a little quirks? Sometimes those quirks can help you if you're over 50. Particularly if you have pain issues. It doesn't mean mental illness. It's just like a reduced capacity to concentrate. There are many ways to word that. 2020 is in the house. Hi, how long it takes to get auxiliary benefits after filing, please? Well, does that mean there's someone who has 1 disability or has retired or has passed away that you have a benefit under? I'm assuming that someone has already won and they just have to file for the auxiliary. It usually doesn't take long, a few weeks. You have to have your proofs. That would be the birth certificates, lining up the parent with the child, or the spouse, the marriage certificate, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, there's got to be some proof. Not just, I mean, I'd be saying I was married to, you know, Elon Musk if it would get me a lot of money. If they don't check. Just kidding, I wouldn't do that. But you know, a lot of people would. There's a lot of fraud. Friday Fraud Law Review, don't forget. My husband of 20 years is a veteran. This is Twill as well. Aw. USMC, Marine Corps, and drives over the road 25 days a month. I thank God for him every day. I bet you do. Oh my God, thank him for his service for me and for his OTR, over the road driving, because our truck drivers, I think he's driving a big truck probably. Is that what he's doing? They are invaluable. They have hard jobs. They don't get to see their families. That's huge. They are like my first responders, except they're not first responding. They are the ones that keep us internally afloat a lot. So he's like a twofer right there, Twill. You picked a good one. KJ says the system is a joke. Back issues going back to 2013 and still. See, it might just be that you don't understand the system. I'm just saying this. First of all, you're 56 now. 2013, you were in your early 40s. Did you not understand? I mean, if you don't understand the system and the rules, it's very hard to follow a rule that you haven't researched and learned. So, you know what I mean? You're in reconsideration. You were denied on initial. Do you have a lawyer? Do you want us to take a look at it? I know you're frustrated. Is it SSI only? You say 2013, back issues going back, but if you were they going back where you couldn't work after 2013, so you're no longer insured for SSD and you need to file for SSI and have? Or are you saying, I've had back issues going back to 13, but I was well able to work, in which case those are kind of irrelevant? We all have back issues. I can't lift 100 pounds like I could 15 years ago. I wasn't disabled from working just because I had back issues, that mild kind of back issue. So you gotta know the system you're working in too. You gotta know the rules. I hear people say it all the time, the system's a joke. And I have to push back on it, because I always, if the system was a joke to that extreme and overall, now that doesn't mean there aren't bad decisions made, but by and large, I mean, I only say this because of what we produce. If the system was off, then none of us would be able to do what we do, and to the extent we can, the success rate. I mean, it depends on the lawyer and how they do things, the practice and what their policies are. You know what I mean? And if you're not a lawyer and you don't, you know what I mean? Or not attorney rep, some of them are very good too. But it all depends on how they practice. What are their rules of engagement? Or what they're going to require that they do to make sure the case is as strong as it can be, as early as it can be. And knowing what rules are going to apply to a particular person's case based on their medical record and their vocational profile. Well, that comes into play. So it's not as big of a joke as some people would like to make it out. I know that when people lose, they say the system is a joke. I get it. They're frustrated. But they also maybe didn't even know what rules they were trying to meet and therefore didn't meet them. Do you know what I mean? Just something to think about. Hey, DJ's in the house. Where you been, pal? I work 2 4-hour shifts and a monthly 2-hour one. So 8 hours a week plus an extra 2-hour one once a month. Recently, after applying and being denied, hoping this adds work credit, but I'm worried I'll be denied because I'm working. Depends on that work. If that work is under SGA and does not show that you could do more than what they've already decided, that's not going to have the influence. It's going to be because your medical records are lacking. You probably have a difficult vocational profile, right, DJ? Meaning in your 40s or less. It's good to see you, though. And the money, what is the amount now? Is it I want to say 1810, 1820 per credit? If you can make 4 credits a month, you're going to be pushing your DLI way out, and you can keep trying and working it and eventually getting it if you don't improve and you are unable to work full-time at any job, and your medical records make that clear, either now or in the future as you build them, So Jen makes a point, and I'm just going to tangentially go off it, Jen, not about your reasoning. She says it bothers her because they make us pay for SSD and Social Security retirement. And that's true. It's compulsory, which makes it kind of like a socialist thing. It's not welfare because we actually pay for our own, but it is socialist in the sense that it's compulsory, right? All right. And she said she would never pay for Social Security taxes if given a choice. A lot of people have made that choice, Jen, and they're called self-employed people who chose not to by writing off every expense and its mother that they could on their taxes. And now they are on welfare or in the gutter without even the safety net of a Social Security insurance payment coming to them in retirement, or not able to file for SSD. So at the very least, even in retirement. So, and I am such a person that's not into the socialist idea. So this is something that I'm like this with. But I feel so strongly that how many people would be destitute and asking for, you're still going to have to pay the taxes to the welfare system. In this case, at least, you pay it for your own right to collect retirement versus have to be on SSI as a senior, which means not a disabled person. You don't have to prove disability to be on SSI as a senior. You just have to prove that you're so poor because you don't have the SS. And then you're going to get that, you know, $900 a month, $1,000 a month. The positive part I'm going to say is I think millions and millions and millions of people live independently without being on the SSI ranks where they have their thumb on the pulse of your neck and you're on a needs-based welfare program. You can't win the lottery. You can't get married to a person with money. You can't do so many things. The benefit of Social Security is that that is not the case. So while it's frustrating that you're having difficulty proving your case, and I get it, and you've been jerked, you know, by a judge who made some really bad, ridiculous decisions and probably should be off the bench. It's like two different issues. And imagine if you didn't pay, again, Social Security, I mean, self-employed people have made this mistake. They're not, because they're supposed to report their income and you only pay on your net income after business expenses, and nobody wants to pay taxes at all. Many of them, I've had family members that did this. They write off everything in their mother and they have a puny little thing like this, like a $300 a month retirement benefit because they decided to save it early, and, you know, and they didn't pay in the premiums more than $300 a month for when they retired, and they pay the price later. Pay the price later. They are dependent on the government now, meaning welfare from the government. They've got that noose around their neck, if you will, or the thumb on the pulse of their neck with SSI. So I'm just saying, again, it's a hard dichotomy for me because I'm very pro not having government compulsion on things, including income tax and everything else. But if there's going to be one, this is the one that pays back in spades. The regular taxes we pay in income tax that go to that highway over there that we never go on, or that NGO sending money to Uganda for, you know, birth control for their people. That stuff I want nothing to do with. And because some people will not save for their retirement when they are no longer able to work, I get why this came into play. I have my issues because, again, I'm not into the compulsory thing, and I'm very more capitalistic than that, and that adults handle their own savings and man up and adult up. But we started dumbing down adults back 50 years ago when high school stopped teaching people about self-sufficiency and making a savings and how to save, that we should be saving 25% of everything we make, you know what I mean, for the rainy day. Since we stopped teaching that, it's almost like, I mean, the whole thing, you can get me started on it, but the saving grace, if there is one, to the compulsory nature, is that now the person is not going to be on SSI as an adult. And if you want to talk about being under the force, you know, you are totally have no control when you're in that scenario. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you, like I said, you can't get married. You can't, by and large, you can't inherit and have the SSI. You can't do so many things, but none of that interferes with Social Security retirement. So that's just what I want to add about that. I get everything else you're saying, though. And yes, it's funny because I always say, well, if the Social Security monies I paid, if I could just take that and put that into a decent, you know, reasonably safe investment account, I would do better than what the Social Security fund does. I believe that's true. And now I would do that if I had the, you know, the right to, which I don't because it's compulsory. But I wouldn't have done that as a young person. I was very in my hand now, spend it now. I was really bad. And that is what probably 95% of young people are. There's 5% who are special people that I think the world of. I just wasn't one of them. So you got to weigh who's going to, will the majority of society crash and burn if we don't have this because we don't teach them otherwise? I think that's what would happen because our education system is horrible in that regard. Horrible. I don't think it was 100 years ago. Of course, 100 years ago, we didn't really have this program yet. But oh, and before we had the program, people did take care of their own, didn't they? And then we got it, and then people slacked up. Then we made them stupid. So then they, live in, yeah. So, anywho, okay. Let's see. Anyway, so I'm just responding. So KJ, you can also just take a little listen on what I just said. It's just another perspective to look at it. Not that I don't understand your perspective and don't somewhat agree. It's just that when you look at the whole circumstances of what's happened to what people have learned, what they're not being taught, we would probably have 90% of our seniors living under bridges or dead. I believe that to be true without their Social Security. And they would not have saved otherwise, because think about it too. You get a big medical bill, savings is wiped out. Guess what doesn't get wiped out? Your future Social Security, no matter how much debt you go into. Unless you rack up tax debts, of course, and they'll probably lien you. Okay, Mephisto is in the house. Long time no see. Would you prefer a client that has a flurry of doctor appointments in a very short span and then has gaps with no doctor appointments? Would you prefer a dribble of doctor appointments with short gaps in between? Well, with short gaps in between, is that even a dribble? What's reasonable? What's reasonable given the claims and the diagnoses? I would look at it that way. Why does there have to be gaps? Gaps will tell their own story, So sometimes it's where someone loses health insurance for 6 months and there's a gap. And that is actually put on the record, actually, to explain that gap. But that gap would then be resolved and then it's all resumed. And so the gap and the reasons for it are well substantiated by the circumstantial evidence. Don't underestimate circumstantial evidence, guys. It's probably the strongest evidence in cases all over the place. Not just criminal cases, but cases such as these. Luenda says, if you have less than 5 years taxes, you're unable to get temporary disability, left with nothing. I don't work with temporary disability. That's a state level thing. So you'll have to look at your different state for what those rules are. I don't really know what you're talking about. If you're talking about Social Security, yeah, it's kind of like you have to pay the premiums in fully to become insured for something. It's like if you pay half your insurance bill for automobile, you're not going to be insured for automobile. You have to pay the whole thing. And that's kind of where that comes in. Oh, My Cross Ministries at 3:29 was still here. What time is it now? 3:50. Oh, my goodness. We're going an extra hour, guys. Twill says DLI was 4/24. I filed in 2022. Date last day of work was 7/21. That means you had some non-working years or light working years under 4 credits in those prior years before all this happened. Last day of work, 7/21, filed for SSDI and SSI. Because if you work through 7/21 solidly, you would not have a DLI of 4/24. It would be more like 2026. So that's what I'm just saying, like your history is a little spotty prior to that. Hey, John Gongon was here. I was passing by and there were the lips. my shimmer, my 80s shimmer. Woo, nice color. The bird hasn't made. My little birdie. Actually, she's my biggest birdie. CG says, update sent for non-medical review today. Ooh, okay. Fingers crossed for you, CG. Delia, absolutely. Delia says, oh no, CG says, portal show sent for non-medical review. Oh, yeah, okay. That doesn't give us any information, by the way. That could go either way, right? Oh, look at this. I don't think we've met Mr. Sean Cornelius. What a cool name. I just started getting SSD. Okay, I'm glad. I'm glad you're through the journey. Because of hydrocephalus with migraines, vasovagal syncope, cyclic vomiting syndrome. I had a cyclic vomiting syndrome case once with a young person, Sean. I was surprised by how they holding back pay. Oh, they might not be. You mean it's just taking longer to get than your first month of perspectives? They're probably running the checks on seeing if there's any liens. if you owed money to the federal government, things like that. But you also have to check to see if you had alimony arrears or child support arrears that you need to pay. That's probably what that's about. If this was a workers' comp case, which I'm guessing it's not based on your disabilities, they would also be checking that out too. Mark Benson says, thank you very much for your kind response. Oh, anytime. Your wording of having a mental issue was much kinder than his. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like mental illness. It can be cognitive reduction, focus, concentration. Anxiety will do this to all of us. You know, I don't suffer from GAD or anything, but I have moments of anxiety, nights of anxiety here and there, where I can't focus on anything other than what I'm anxious about. Is that a disorder? I don't think so. But it's certainly a symptom of a momentary, a snapshot in time of this. Think about it. And so with people that do have anxiety or chronic pain, there's also adjustment disorder, by the way, when we're having a hard time adjusting to the fact that we don't work anymore. We're not supporting our families. The spouse is pulling more weight than we are. We don't feel like this other thing. We can't climb the ladder to clean the gutters anymore. It can cause little pieces of depression. Doesn't mean it's depression that would ever win you your case. But if you're over 50, that mental distraction, if it's properly documented in the medical file, can show that you can't do that prior job. If you had a prior job that was skilled or semi-skilled, it's absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. Ooh, we got another cool name here. Deep Seawick. Hi, Deep Seawick. I'm going back to my adjudicator, ALJ, I think you meant, after a federal remand in April 14th, and have a fusion back surgery on March 26th. Oh, gosh. And don't want to reschedule. It's been 4 years of fighting. Should I just suck it up and go? Well, if are you going to a hearing on April 14th? No, do a video hearing. MS Teams. You shouldn't have to leave your couch or your bed or your wheelchair or anything else that you're in. Do it right from your phone. We do them all the time. Were you aware of that? They sent you paperwork on it when they were scheduling the hearing. If that's what you're talking about, April 14th hearing, talk to them. You could resort to a phone hearing too. Same idea. But you do not have to trek your butt to a hearing office and have it in person. I wouldn't. In fact, I don't do it. KJ says, I know nothing about this stuff, meaning SSD. I worked until 2025. Well, that's why we're here, KJ. KJ. DJ Kenny. Oh, DJ, you're 52. Okay. Was yours all mental health, DJ? 52. You have an attorney, right? If I recall. DJ Kenny saying, I got logged off. Sorry, nice seeing you too. I'm working as a direct support assistant for a developmentally destabilized person. Direct support assistant, that's a physical job, isn't it? Are you doing the physical stuff? Helping them in and out of the car, in and out of the bathtub? That's a little physical. I hope if your case has physical stuff in it, which to grid at 52, you need physical, that could be a little inconsistent. Your hours are low, but the kind of work you're choosing might not be. I don't know, because I don't know for sure if I'm reading that right. Twill says, Ms. Stephanie, what can we do if our DLI expires while we're awaiting the ALJ? How can we contact you? Well, I can't fix your DLI. The only way you can remedy that is by working. All right. Did you say that your DLI is going to expire while you're waiting for ALJ hearing? Because that's a tougher place to be. It's a lot tougher place to be. Sure is. How can we contact you? You see that little, we've said this like 10 times today. You see that little, what do we call that, Dimple? QR code? You can get to the website through that. DJ, you're, okay. 52. Love seeing you again. Lovely to see you as well. I got it caught up after being logged off temporarily. Now live with you. Ah, very cool. KJ, DLI is date last insured. I have a playlist on date last insured if you want to learn more about it. It's critical to your case. You need to know your DLI. We have a side service for like $25 that can, if you get your Social Security earnings statement, we will do the calculations for the DLI. But you can also get it for free by calling the 1-800 number or your local SSA office. The side service is for those that don't care to do that and sit on hold. If they're going to, you don't always sit on hold though. So it's all up to the person. It's just an alternative. So Deep Seawick says they won't reschedule to a video on the 14th. I already asked my lawyer. Sucks so bad. That's BS. Why won't they reschedule it? Is it your lawyer that won't? Did he ask? I mean, you're literally, maybe you shouldn't be jostling in a car to get to an in-person. Why is your lawyer even, why did that ever even come up as an in-person? All of ours just go automatically MS Teams. And that works for everybody, including homeless people that only have a phone. Because MS Team works on the phone. Shiloh says, question on work history states, since May 8th, 2023, have you had any earnings greater than $1,470 before tax in any month? Do not count 6. I did. That's okay. Well, you said that you've been working SGA since 2023, unless that was a typo, which I told you, then you can't apply it yet. But if you're saying you just had a few months here and there, and you earned more than $1,470, you might have some SGA months that they're going to have to take into account when they're figuring out your trial work period, whether it's expired, how much you've eaten up of your extended period of eligibility if you win later, which would mean that if you do another SGA month during your extended period of eligibility, you lose your case after you've won it. And you might have an overpayment. So definitely things to know about, Shiloh. DJ says it's fibromyalgia and anxiety and depression with lawyer. I only drive someone around, nothing physical. So you're the driver. Very important when you describe that work that you're very clear about that. Okay? And that it's, and the short shifts. At 52, I try to look into other bodily degeneration other than fibromyalgia, DJ. Fibromyalgia is not, it's like the redheaded stepchild of disorders with the SSA in practical, reasons. So I think it would be smart if you have joint issues, knees are not as good as they used to, feet, back, you should be going to an orthopedist and getting MRIs and x-rays. This is my opinion. Ask your lawyer. If that was what I saw with my client, I'd be like, yeah, let's try to get out from under the skirts of fibromyalgia. It can stay there as a little thing in the background, and not because fibromyalgia is not horrible. I have videos on this, but it's because it's not given the same respect because it lacks objective diagnostic testing. At 52, come on, DJ, you've got to have some arthritis going on. You've got to have some aches, creaky joints that are not fibromyalgia related. Okay, I'm telling you, that's what I'd be doing. Just saying. Cause we are local. Yeah, what jerk? Sorry. But when you first filled out that form, you had the right to reject in person and only accept MS Teams. I don't understand why someone wouldn't do that. I mean, I know you were not shown that opportunity, or maybe you didn't realize how much you would want it. Maybe, I don't know, but it sure is a larger discussion, Jen May. We could go on and on. I only care anything about SSA in my case still cause it's $70,000 in back pay. I know, but I don't know. Again, as you know, I don't know your evidence, but I know that you have described things to me that seem very, very serious. So I have my fingers crossed for you every day. And I hope you get exactly what you should be getting. And hopefully it'll be over soon for you too. Yes, I know. There are luckily all kinds of ways to get money. Okay. Yes, I drive him to his appointment 4 hours. So you're proving that you can sit for extended periods of time. Are you driving for 4 hours? Which does not prove that you can do light work, but it does maybe prove you could do sedentary. But at 52, being able to do sedentary is okay. You have to prove you can't do your old job. And you have to prove that you can't do light work. So that's why that fibromyalgia does not really prove you can't do light work. In fact, fibromyalgia, they often say more activity is better. So that's why I want to see you get that orthopedic workup. MRIs, x-rays, preferably MRIs, but you know, follow. Osteoarthritis, bingo, there you go. Work that up. Consider working it up. Talk to your lawyer. He's the one advising you. I'm only saying what I see, which is not the full information, is not legal advice. Okay, IBS, then you need to be going to gastro, and I would keep an IBS journal if it's really bad. I've discussed that elsewhere, so I won't go into that here. Okay. Yeah, so Kenny, DJ's bringing up a good point. He can't sit or stand too long, which is why this job works for him, because he's driving for 20 minutes and he's out of the car and then sitting. So he's not doing any too much. And the point is, DJ, you have to prove that you can't do that all day long, that your body would not be able to withstand being in that work posture of standing, sitting, even if it's alternating for 8 hours, because something happens. And then you have to figure out what that is and make sure it's reflected in the medical records. The osteoarthritis, if it's showing up, maybe you have canal stenosis in your spine. I mean, you're not going to know unless you get these MRIs. Maybe you've had them. I don't know. You said lots of MRIs and x-rays. I see you're saying there. Are they recent? Are they updated? They need to be now. Okay. Or within the last, I'd say, year. My Cross Ministry says, thank you for your precious time, Stephanie. We here do appreciate the knowledge you give us. Thank you, sis. Oh, thank you. And thank you for the little, I love the My Cross Ministries. That's awesome. I love a like-minded. All right. It makes me feel not always so alone there, My Cross. You know how that could be sometimes, right? Shiloh says, I'm confused. I haven't worked at all since 2023. Oh, so so up top you said something like, I've worked SGA since 2023. I think what you meant was I haven't worked SGA since 2023. Okay, good. Work history report question asks, when did the changes start? If you are asserting disability in August of 2023, then you say, no, I did not earn more than that after that because you haven't been working, right? If you put down, okay, I'm just going to say this. If you put down that you changed a little bit about your work prior to stopping work, but you're still working SGA, you put down that you did make changes. Now you have a whole nother form to fill out. Have fun, and it won't get you any more benefits. So I don't suggest, if it's changes that made you potentially not be working SGA, so they could they're asking it to see if they can give you an older onset date. But if you already know that you can't get an older onset date because you were working SGA prior to August of 2023, even though maybe you were no longer lifting the 50 pounds and you're only lifting the 30 pounds, you know you were doing SGA. It doesn't even matter what the changes are. It's not going to get you an older onset date. They're asking because they don't know those details yet. So they're going to want you to do all sorts of reports for that so that they can say, oh yeah, too bad. So you're going to have the August 2023 date. So why put all the extra work on yourself and on them when you already know? Well, you might not know because you don't know the rules, but I know if what you're telling me is so, that you would not be getting an older onset date than, August of 2023. So I'm just trying to save you a little work here, and you'll be saving that Social Security office work too. Labor hours, funds from the administrative side of SSD. DJ says, precisely, the forest is really pushing it. I have bone spurs, MRIs in the last year. All right, so your case isn't so bad. I bet your lawyers are doing a fun job. You mentioned the fibromyalgia. Just, focus on the other stuff. Don't forget about the fibro, but like, honestly, that's not the one that's going to help you win. In fact, they usually think a lot of people think it's all in your head. We know it's not so, but this is what this like bias with fibromyalgia is all about. And SSA, the SSA acknowledges that it's a true disorder, pain disorder, but that doesn't mean that the people making decisions won't try to find a way to say, yeah, he's got fibromyalgia, he's limited to light work or, medium work. Can't do heavy work. He's got fibromyalgia. But so you know what I mean? Like they know how to tailor things. Yeah, Mike Ross says, yes, I do. Twill says, DLI is 4 of 25. My lawyer says my hearing should be by August 26th. So the judge has to find me disabled for, yes, the judge does. So otherwise you have to find a new path. And you haven't started to plan the path yet. So you're kind of going to be starting behind the 8 ball. But anyway, fingers crossed, man. It should be, you have some serious stuff. So let's just fingers crossed for your hearing. All right. But maybe we have plan B starting to get worked on. It's 2026. You could earn money in 2026 to get you 4 credits if you start soon, working part-time under SGA. Don't do that without talking to your lawyer first. That might make him nervous. If your hearing was in August, you would have August, September, October, November. But I wouldn't suggest working enough to get all 4 credits because then you'd be over SGA. So always keep yourself under SGA. You do some months under SGA, you will have earned credits for 2026. Maybe just 2, but maybe 3. I know you have to do the math. Keep yourself protected. So that's still a disabling time period to be included in the next case if things go sideways. Hopefully they won't. Twill. Shiloh's next. Sorry. Shiloh says, I stated it was in May 2023 when the changes started. Oh, okay. Well, I would. They might have to send you, if you didn't finish it or you did. If you haven't done it yet, I would just be like, if the changes are not the type that are going to pull back your onset date, then why bother? Now, if you had, and I'm saying that you have to learn what relevant changes we're talking about. If you were still making SGA, no. If you had 30 days or more of a big gap in time in those 3 months because you had to take a month off, that could be a reason why I can get pulled back. Okay? So, but if you didn't have that, it's probably not going to, there's no basis for it, and you're just going to have to do the additional reports. It's not the end of the world if you have to do them. I'm just saying that sometimes it's nice to not have to do them when you know where they're going with it. But they're being protective of you to make sure they ask the right questions to see if that you were really disabled before you stopped working. DJ says, pain clinic, spine clinic, gastro. Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds like you got good stuff. Yeah. So focus on that stuff, DJ, not the fibro. My medical records are detailed, but not for, this is Twill, but not for 20 to 22, only from 24 up till now, the pandemic. Well, at least you have that time period. But then I interrupted a lot, and that's when all my symptoms worsened. Yeah, 2020 was maybe an excusable one. They're not going to really buy it for 21 and 22, though, probably. Definitely not 2022. Doctors are all backing up and running. But you got some time. It's not till 2025. Hopefully you did really good in 23 and 24 and whatever little part of 2025. And then, like, if after your DLI, let's say you had an MRI a week after your DLI. I think it's pretty safe to say those findings there, if they're severe, that didn't start the week after the DLI when you got the test. And a judge is going to know that, in the back of his head. Shiloh's DLI is 12/28. It's not 12/28. It's the last day of December 2028. So you misheard them, but so it's always the last day of a quarter, and December is one of the 4 quarters. So you got 2.5 years. So that could be worse. Could be worse. I'm glad it's not in the past, and I'm glad it's not in 6 months. So go to town. Go to town on those treatments. All right, guys, we are now at the 3 hours and 12-minute mark. Went a little extra long because I'm really apologetic about that problem with my battery. I'm really scared. Not because it's not fixable. You can always just buck up and buy another computer, even though it would make me bankrupt, and it wouldn't need another computer. I'm concerned because they take away my computer for weeks. I have my other computer, and I'm going to try to get this battery charged and recopy some of the, everything I have is in the cloud, but I have one set of stuff that has to be local because it's constantly being shifted. And Microsoft Word right now, with these updates they've done over the last several months, they stopped saving things, so I can't reliably keep it. It's a real bad glitch. It has to do, I think, with cloud. It might be a Mac thing too, combined with Microsoft Word. It's atrocious. I wish they'd fix it. These big software companies, sorry, they disappoint you at every turn. All right, Shep Dad is in the house. I'm gonna have to take these couple two guys, and then I'm going. But anyway, I'll keep you posted. Maybe in the main post board, I'll be like, ha, I think I've got it fixed. We'll see. But I will have to take it to the Geek Squad or something, the Apple certified people, for Apple Care, if not, and just make sure I get everything on my. Thank God I bought this new computer a couple months ago while my old computer is still not having problems. But you just never know, and that's why I wanted to back up because it was a few years old. Shep Dad says, I just got home from CE mental exam when I filled under physical needing lumbar fusion. I don't know what that is. Before leaving the office, a psychiatrist asked if I'm getting continued mental treatment. Thoughts? Doesn't say one thing, one or the other. He was curious. Oh, you filed. You didn't feel filed under physical needing lumbar fusion. Well, do you get mental health treatment or not? They say you do as mental CE because something in one of your documents suggested that you had anxiety or depression or something like that. So I can't really share any thoughts because I don't know what your medical records say, and I don't know what happened at your exam. But fingers crossed for you, Shep, because it might be coming soon, a decision for you. My Cross Ministry says, I'm only 8 months in the SSA stage 3. Yep, that's the main stage. That's where we're at the longest. Still pulling medical records, still reviewing them. I am 58, 59 in November. DDD, degenerative disc disease, lower back, spinal stenosis, Meniere's, neurologist just diagnosed with narrowing cranial vessel. And he's finishing here. Current vision issues, hard labor job all my life. Last worked in first quarter of 2023, prescribed quad, cane, and walk. I think it sounds like you have a good case. I think it sounds like you have a good case, assuming you're doing all this treatment, which it sounds like you are. Your vocational profile is favorable, and you had a physical job. That's part of your vocational profile. So, fingers crossed for you, my Cross. I think you have a lot going on, and your vocational profile is supportive. So, if something flies south, and if it flies south or sideways, and you don't get the result you should, and if you don't have an attorney, definitely feel free to call me or go to the link. But I think you might have a good shot on initial. You're on initial, right? Yeah, I saw the malice, and I'm like, I think my Cross meant my life. So I get you. That could be fingers or dictation. You should see the stuff that comes out of me. It's crazy. All right, guys, we are at the end here. Thank you so much for sticking it out and for seeing if I was coming back. And I'm glad I was able to come back. Thank God for my power workhorse here. Gotta get the. It's so funny. I just can't believe what's going on. It's so upsetting to me when you spend a unbelievable amount of money. A lot of it's for the software and stuff. But, I'm also a Mac person, so everything's more expensive. But, I mean, I spent I definitely spent over 2 times what I normally spend on my computer. I'd say it's like almost 3 times. Because I'm getting the RAM. I'm going full 9 yards. Because It literally is 24/7, and I can't have things slow, and I can't have things running out of space. I can't have that. So I just need to find out what's going on with this battery system, because it's unacceptable. All right, so I'm going to go knock some heads. I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you check out the 12 noon recordings. I didn't get one up today. It's probably going to go up later today. Either that or maybe I just won't. And of course, every Wednesday, 1 p.m. live stream. But the 12 p.m.s definitely help the mission, guys. So the live streams actually don't. It's just my fun day with you guys. It doesn't do the same as it's just the way the whole system with YouTube works. But anyway, I'm eternally grateful you are here, and God bless, and be safe, everybody, and keep your attitude up. Put on a smile. Sometimes we don't feel it, and in time you might actually feel it. And sometimes I notice if you don't feel good and you kind of smile at someone else out and about your day, and they smile and you realize you made them smile, it can also help your day. That's a little nerdy thing from me. Thank you very much. Happy Wednesday, guys, and I will talk to you later.